In this video, we're breaking down 2 hours of heartbreaking upper moon backstories to fall asleep to. First up, we got Gyutaro and Daki, the siblings who chose hell together. In the lowest, filthiest corner of Japan's entertainment district lived 2 children who never stood a chance. One was born so ugly that people threw rocks at him. The other was born so beautiful that it got her killed. Their names were Gyutaro and Ume, and together they became Upper Moon 6, sharing a single demon rank for over a century. This is their story. The Rashomon River bank sat at the very bottom of Yoshiwara, the famous entertainment district in Edo period Japan. When people think of Yoshiwara, they picture elegant courtesans in expensive kimonos, beautiful music, and wealthy customers. But the Rashomon River bank was nothing like that. This was where the poorest of the poor lived. The buildings were falling apart. Disease spread through the cramped streets. Children were seen as burdens, extra mouths to feed that nobody wanted. In this place, your worth as a human being was measured by one thing and one thing only: how beautiful you were. Gyutaro was born in this hellhole over a century ago. His mother was a prostitute who had contracted syphilis, a disease that ravaged the entertainment district. She became pregnant with Gyutaro while infected, which meant he was born with congenital syphilis. This disease twisted his body before he even took his first breath. His bones grew crooked. His teeth came in uneven and broken. Dark blotches covered his skin. His voice came out raspy and strange. From the moment he was born, Gyutaro was considered ugly beyond measure. His mother looked at her newborn son and felt nothing but hatred. She beat him constantly. Before he was even born, she had tried to kill him, attempting to cause a miscarriage because she knew she could not afford to feed another child. But Gyutaro clung to life. He survived despite everything working against him. Throughout his childhood, his mother's abuse continued. She blamed him for existing. She blamed him for being another mouth to feed. She blamed him for being ugly in a place where beauty was the only currency that mattered. The other residents of the Rashomon River bank treated him no better. They called him a worm, a simpleton, a stupid coward, a good-for-nothing. They mocked his voice, which sounded scratchy and unpleasant. They mocked his appearance, pointing at the blotches on his skin and his crooked features. They threw rocks at him as he walked down the street. They called him filth. They said he was so ugly that his mere existence was an insult. Children would see him and run away crying. Adults would spit in his direction. Gyutaro later said that it felt like the entire point of his existence was to give the whole world someone to mock. With no money and no way to get food, Gyutaro ate whatever he could find: insects, mice, anything that would keep him alive for one more day. His body was weak and malnourished, but like a hollow tree, he desperately clung to life. He had no friends. He had no family that cared about him. His father was never in the picture, likely one of his mother's many customers who never knew or cared that he had fathered a child. Gyutaro had absolutely nothing. The only possession he owned was a sickle that some customer had left behind at one of the brothels. He found it discarded in the street and kept it. That rusty, forgotten sickle became his only toy, his only tool, his only means of protection in a world that wanted him dead. He taught himself how to use it, swinging it around in the alleys when nobody was watching. He had no training, no teacher, no guidance. Just a sick, starving child with a sharp object and nothing to lose. For a brief time, Gyutaro worked as a gyu, which was the lowest job in the entertainment district. A gyu was a barker, someone who stood outside and tried to convince customers to come into the establishments. It was humiliating work, and Gyutaro was terrible at it because of his appearance and voice. But the word gyu stuck with him. When people asked his name, he started calling himself Gyutaro, adding taro to the end because that was a common ending for male names in Japan. He literally named himself after the worst job he ever had because he had nothing else to claim as his identity. Then, everything changed. His mother became pregnant again. When Gyutaro's younger sister was born, the entire Rashomon River bank stopped and stared. The baby girl was beautiful. Stunningly, impossibly beautiful, especially considering where she came from and who her parents were. She had perfect features, flawless skin, and an almost supernatural charm, even as an infant. Their mother named her Ume, which means plum blossom, but the name actually came from Baidu, the Japanese word for syphilis. Their mother essentially named her daughter after the disease that was killing her. It was cruel, but in the Rashomon River bank, cruelty was normal. For Gyutaro, his sister's birth was a miracle. Finally, he had someone. Finally, he had a reason to keep living. He looked at baby Ume and made a promise to himself. He would protect her no matter what. He would make sure she never suffered the way he had suffered. He would use his ugliness, his strength, and his willingness to do violence to keep her safe. Where the world had given him nothing but pain, he would give her everything. As Ume grew, her beauty only increased. By the time she was a young child, everyone in the district was talking about her. They said she would become the greatest courtesan the entertainment district had ever seen. They said she would make a fortune. People who had spat at Gyutaro would smile and bow when Ume walked by. The same district that had called her brother garbage now treated her like a princess. Their mother died of syphilis when Ume was still young. The disease that had marked Gyutaro before birth and given Ume her name finally took their mother's life. Gyutaro felt nothing when she died. He did not alert anyone. He just let her body rot in their small room until someone else noticed and took it away. She had given him nothing but misery, so he gave her nothing in return. With their mother dead and their father non-existent, Gyutaro raised Ume by himself. He was still just a child himself, a teenager at most, but he took on the role of parent, protector, and provider. He found work as a debt collector, which suited him perfectly. People in the entertainment district owed money to various establishments, and Gyutaro's job was to go collect it. His ugly appearance, his intimidating presence, and his willingness to use violence made him effective. People feared him. They called him creepy. They handed over their money quickly just to make him go away, and Gyutaro loved it. After a lifetime of being mocked and abused, he finally had power. People feared him, and fear was better than mockery. Despite his fearsome reputation as a debt collector, Gyutaro remained devoted to his sister. He worked as her collector, which meant he managed her career as she entered the world of courtesans. He made sure she got paid. He made sure customers treated her well. He made sure nobody took advantage of her. When Ume officially entered a high-end brothel at age 13, Gyutaro was there to protect her. Together, they started to build something that resembled a life. Gyutaro was proud of his ugliness now because it made him effective. He was proud to have such a beautiful sister because it meant they were finally going somewhere. For the first time in his miserable existence, Gyutaro thought their lives were heading in a good direction. He told Ume again and again, "Together, the two of us are invincible. Through cold and hunger, we will never part. I promise we will always be together. So, there is nothing in the world for us to fear." Ume worked at one of the better establishments in the district. Though she was still only 13 years old, she received education, proper clothing, and regular meals. She was being groomed to become a high-ranking courtesan, possibly even an oiran, the highest rank. Customers paid just to see her smile. Her beauty was so extraordinary that people traveled from far away just to glimpse her. Everything seemed perfect. But there was a problem customer. A samurai had been visiting Ume regularly, and he kept delaying his payments. He made excuses. He promised to pay later. He tried to take advantage of her because she was young. Ume put up with it for a while, but one day she snapped. When the samurai came to her again with more excuses and grabbed her roughly, something inside her broke. She grabbed a hairpin from her hair and stabbed him directly in the eye. The samurai screamed. Blood poured down his face. Ume had blinded him in one eye, and in that moment, she sealed her fate. A courtesan attacking a samurai was unforgivable, no matter what the samurai had done. Ume was still just a child, only 13 years old, but that did not matter. She had injured someone important, someone from the warrior class. There would be consequences. Gyutaro was out collecting debts when it happened. He was not there to protect her. The samurai was enraged, humiliated, and in tremendous pain. The brothel manager panicked, knowing that this incident could destroy their business. They needed to get rid of the problem quickly and quietly, so they made a decision. They tied Ume up, they carried her outside, and they set her on fire. Ume screamed as the flames consumed her body. They burned her alive, wrapping her in cloth and lighting it, turning a 13-year-old girl into a human torch because she dared to defend herself. When they were done, they threw her burned body into a ditch and left her there to die. They left her like garbage, like she was nothing, like all her beauty and all her promise meant absolutely nothing the moment she stepped out of line. When Gyutaro came home, he knew immediately that something was wrong. The air smelled wrong, the atmosphere felt wrong. He ran through the streets asking where his sister was, and eventually someone told him the truth. Someone pointed him toward the ditch. Gyutaro found Ume lying in a ditch, her entire body covered in severe burns. Her skin was charred black. Her beautiful face was destroyed. She was barely breathing, clinging to life by a thread. She was conscious enough to see him, her eyes struggling to focus through the pain. Gyutaro jumped down into the ditch and grabbed her, tears streaming down his face. He was panicking, begging, demanding that someone turn her back to normal. His sister, his only reason for living, was dying in his arms, and there was nothing he could do. That was when the samurai appeared, the same man whose eye Ume had stabbed. He had come to finish the job. He snuck up behind Gyutaro and slashed him across the back with his sword, trying to kill him. Gyutaro collapsed forward, his blood mixing with his sister's burns. He heard the samurai talking to the brothel manager, and he realized that the manager had ordered his death too. They wanted both siblings gone. But Gyutaro was not done yet. Despite the sword wound in his back, despite the pain, despite everything. Gyutaro pushed himself up. He grabbed his sickle, the same weapon he had carried since childhood, and he moved. Before the samurai could react, Gyutaro killed the brothel manager with one swift cut to the neck. Then he turned to the samurai. The warrior tried to defend himself, raising his katana, but Gyutaro was faster. He sliced through the samurai's sword and then split the man's head in two with a single strike. Gyutaro stood there covered in blood, holding his dying sister, surrounded by the corpses of the men who had tried to destroy them. He was fatally wounded himself, bleeding heavily from the sword slash in his back, but he did not care about his own injuries. He only cared about Ume. He picked up her burned body, cradling her as gently as he could, and he started walking through the streets of the Rashomon riverbank. He begged everyone he passed to help her. He pleaded. He offered anything and everything. He walked through the entire district searching for someone, anyone, who would save his sister. Nobody helped. People saw him coming and closed their doors. They turned away. They pretended not to see. The same people who had bowed to Ume when she was beautiful now refused to even look at her burned body. The same district that had praised her now abandoned her completely. Gyutaro carried his sister's body for hours, his own strength fading with every step, blood trailing behind him. His vision started to blur. His legs began to give out. Finally, he collapsed in the middle of the street, still holding Ume. They were both dying. Gyutaro lay on his back, Ume's burned body resting on his chest, both of them staring up at the sky. They had survived poverty, abuse, starvation, and endless cruelty. They had clawed their way toward something better, and now they were going to die in the street like dogs while the entire world watched and did nothing. That was when Doma appeared. Doma was Upper Moon 6 at the time, a demon who ranked among the most powerful servants of the Demon King Muzan. He had been walking through the entertainment district that night, hunting for young women to devour. He stumbled upon the two dying siblings lying in the street. Most people would have walked past. Most demons would have just eaten them. But Doma was curious. He saw the rage in Gyutaro's eyes. He saw the desperation. He sensed something interesting in these two broken children. Doma smiled, his usual cheerful smile, and called himself a nice guy. He said he wanted to help them. He offered them a choice. He said he could turn them into demons, give them power and immortality, and they would never have to suffer again. All they had to do was accept his blood. It seemed too good to be true, but Gyutaro and Ume had nothing left to lose. They were already dying. What did they have to fear? Gyutaro accepted immediately. Doma bit his own wrist and let his blood drip into Gyutaro's mouth, then did the same for Ume. The transformation was agonizing. Their bodies writhed and changed as Muzan's blood, filtered through Doma, rewrote their very existence. Gyutaro's wounds healed, but his appearance became even more twisted. His skin turned gray with black blotches. His body became unnaturally thin in some places and muscular in others. His teeth grew sharp and interlocking. The disease that had marked him since birth became permanently etched into his demon form. Ume's burns vanished completely. Her beauty returned, even more striking than before. Her body regenerated perfectly. She looked more like a goddess than a demon, but something had changed inside her. The pain of being burned alive, the betrayal, the cruelty she had experienced, all of it hardened into something cold and vicious. She took on a new name, Daki, which meant fallen princess. She was no longer the innocent girl who had dreamed of becoming a great courtesan. She was something else now. Doma gave them a challenge before he left. He told them to become strong enough that Muzan Kibutsuji, the Demon King himself, would notice them and allow them to join the 12 Kizuki, the elite group of demons who served directly under Muzan. Doma said this cheerfully, like it was a fun game. Then he disappeared into the night, leaving the two newly transformed demons to figure out their new existence. Gyutaro and Daki quickly discovered something unusual about their transformation. Unlike other demons, they could share a single body. Gyutaro could completely hide himself inside Daki, merging with her without adding any mass or weight. He could remain dormant inside her, seeing everything she saw, hearing everything she heard, waiting until he was needed. This meant Daki could operate normally, luring victims and feeding, while Gyutaro remained hidden as a secret weapon. But it went deeper than that. Gyutaro could detach his core from his own body and implant it into Daki. He would take his left eye and place it in her forehead, creating a psychic connection between them. Through this connection, they became nearly impossible to kill. Both of their heads had to be cut off at the exact same time, or they would just regenerate. One sibling could not die without the other. They were truly bound together, just as Gyutaro had promised when they were children. They remained in the entertainment district, the place that had tormented them, and they turned it into their hunting ground. Daki would seduce and lure victims using her beauty, the same beauty that had once been her only asset. Gyutaro would emerge when needed, slaughtering anyone who proved too strong for Daki to handle alone. They worked perfectly together, their attacks synchronized through their psychic connection. They could coordinate assaults on multiple opponents, even when fighting in different locations. Over the course of the next century, Gyutaro and Daki killed and devoured countless humans. Gyutaro alone killed 15 Hashira, the strongest warriors in the Demon Slayer Corps. Daki killed 7 more. 22 of the greatest demon slayers in history fell to these 2 siblings from the slums. Their power grew with each victim. They climbed through the ranks of demonkind until finally, Muzan himself acknowledged them. He made them Upper Moon 6, the 6 strongest demons in existence. Muzan found Gyutaro particularly interesting. The Demon King valued Gyutaro's greedy, vengeful personality. Gyutaro's belief that he deserved to take from others because of what had been taken from him resonated with Muzan. During meetings of the Upper Moons, Muzan only acknowledged Gyutaro as the true Upper Moon 6, though Daki shared the position. To Muzan, Daki was more like an extension of Gyutaro than a separate demon. The siblings spent over 100 years as demons, never aging, never dying, always together. They lived in the same entertainment district where they had suffered as children. They killed anyone who looked happy. They killed anyone who was beautiful. They killed anyone who had the kind of life they were denied. Gyutaro would sarcastically compliment his victims, praising their looks or their talents right before killing them, savoring the irony of destroying the things he had always envied. Daki would throw tantrums and demand attention, acting like the spoiled princess she had always wanted to be as a child. But underneath all the cruelty and violence, their bond remained. Gyutaro still protected Daki. He still emerged from her body to save her whenever she was in danger. He still treated her like the most precious thing in the world. Daki relied on him completely, knowing her big brother would always be there. They bickered and argued like all siblings do, but they never truly turned on each other. They were the only constant in each other's endless existence. Their reign finally ended when Tanjiro Kamado and the sound Hashira Tengen Uzui came to the entertainment district. The battle was brutal. It took Tengen, Tanjiro, Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Nezuko all working together to finally behead both siblings at the same moment. As their bodies began to disintegrate, as they died for real this time, Gyutaro and Daki turned on each other with vicious words. Gyutaro said Daki was weak and worthless, that she had wasted his life by making him care for her. Daki screamed back that she wished she had never been born as his sister, that his ugliness had ruined everything. But Tanjiro, watching them die, said something that cut through their anger. He told them they were lying. He said they did not mean any of those hateful words. He said they were only lashing out because they were scared and hurt, and he was right. As their souls separated from their bodies, as they began to fade into death, Gyutaro and Daki's memories of their human lives came flooding back. Gyutaro remembered carrying baby Ume. He remembered promising to always protect her. He remembered that she had been his only light in a world of darkness. Daki remembered how Gyutaro had raised her, fed her, kept her safe when nobody else would. She remembered that he had loved her when nobody else did. In the afterlife, they found themselves walking in opposite directions. Ahead of Daki was a bright light, the path to heaven. She had been young when she became a demon. She had been a victim. She could still be forgiven. Behind Gyutaro was only darkness, the path to hell where he belonged for all the murders he had committed. He told her to go toward the light. He told her to leave him behind and have the fresh start she deserved. He said she could have lived a better life if he had not been in it. He genuinely wished she had been born to different parents, raised in better circumstances, away from his negative influence. But Daki refused. She turned away from the light and ran toward her brother. She grabbed onto him and cried, saying she would never leave him. She reminded him that they were strongest together. She reminded him of his promise that they would always be together, that they would never part. She said no matter how many times she died and was reborn, she would always be his little sister. If he was going to hell, then she was going to hell with him. They would walk that path together, just like they had walked every other path in their miserable existence. Gyutaro tried to push her away, but Daki held on tight. So they turned toward the darkness together, 2 souls bound by blood and suffering, and they walked into hell side by side. The siblings from the slums, who had nothing and no one except each other, who had survived poverty and disease and cruelty and death, who had chosen to become monsters rather than victims, made their final choice together. They chose hell together because being apart was worse than any punishment the universe could devise. Their story became a dark mirror of Tanjiro and Nezuko's bond. Both sets of siblings loved each other deeply. Both would do anything to protect each other. But where Tanjiro and Nezuko found hope and compassion despite their tragedy, Gyutaro and Daki found only rage and vengeance. Where one pair chose to remain human in spirit, the other pair embraced their monstrous nature completely. And yet, in the end, the love between them was equally real. Daki's refusal to abandon Gyutaro, even for salvation, proved that some bonds transcend even death and damnation. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Geku, the coward who became Upper Moon 6. Some people are born into tragedy. Others create their own downfall through their choices. Kaigaku was both. He was an orphan with nothing, a boy who survived by doing whatever it took, no matter how shameful. But when given a chance at redemption, at family, at honor, he threw it all away to save his own skin. He became a demon not because of suffering, but because of cowardice. This is the story of the replacement Upper Moon 6, the man who betrayed everyone who ever cared about him. Kaigaku's early life was one of complete poverty. He was an orphan, a child with no parents, no home, and no one to protect him. He grew up on the streets, doing whatever he needed to survive. He stole from people. He drank water from puddles when he was thirsty. He had no moral compass, no sense of right and wrong. To him, survival was the only thing that mattered. If he had to lie, cheat, or steal to live one more day, then that was what he would do. As a young child, Kaigaku found himself taken in by a man named Gyomei Himejima. Gyomei would later become the Stone Hashira, the strongest demon slayer in the Corps, but at this time, he was simply a kind man who ran a temple and took care of orphan children. Gyomei gave Kaigaku a home. He gave him food, shelter, and safety. He raised Kaigaku alongside 8 other orphan children, treating them all as his own. For the first time in his life, Kaigaku had a family. The other children at the temple were happy. They laughed and played together. They ate meals as a group, talking and smiling. Gyomei would pat them on the head and tell them they were good children. Kaigaku seemed happy too. He talked with the other orphans. He ate with them. He smiled when Gyomei praised him. For a brief moment, it looked like Kaigaku might have found peace, might have found a place where he belonged. But Kaigaku's sense of self-preservation, his need to survive at any cost, was stronger than any bond of family or gratitude. One night, a demon attacked the temple. Demons are creatures that hunt and eat humans, and they are especially drawn to places where multiple people live together. This demon broke into the temple while everyone was sleeping, looking for children to devour. The other orphans were terrified. They screamed and cried. Gyomei, who was blind, immediately moved to protect them, positioning himself between the children and the demon. Kaigaku made a choice in that moment. He could have stayed and helped fight. He could have trusted Gyomei to protect them. He could have warned everyone and given them a chance to escape together. Instead, he did something unforgivable. To save his own life, Kaigaku let the demon into the temple. He invited the demon in, showing it where the other children were sleeping, sacrificing their lives so that the demon would spare him. The demon slaughtered the other children. It killed them one by one while Kaigaku hid and watched. Gyomei fought desperately to save them, using nothing but his bare hands and his determination. He managed to kill the demon eventually, but by then it was too late. Most of the children were dead. Gyomei was arrested because people thought he had killed the children himself. Nobody believed that a blind man could have fought off a demon. Kaigaku, the one who had actually betrayed them all, walked away without any consequences. Kaigaku felt no guilt. He felt no remorse. In his mind, he had done what was necessary to survive. The other children were weak, and he was strong, because he was willing to do what they would not. He believed that surviving was the same thing as winning, and since he was alive, he had won. It did not matter what he had done to achieve that survival. It did not matter who he had betrayed. He was alive, and that was all that mattered. Eventually, Gyomei was cleared of all charges and went on to become a demon slayer. Kaigaku went in a different direction. He learned about demons and about the organization that fought them, the Demon Slayer Corps. He decided to join, not because he wanted to protect people or fight evil, but because he wanted status and power. He wanted to become strong. He wanted people to respect him and fear him. Kaigaku was taken in by a man named Jigoro Kawajima, a retired Hashira, who had once held the title of Thunder Hashira. Jigoro was a master of thunder breathing, a sword fighting style that emphasized speed and powerful single strikes. Jigoro took on 2 students. One was Kaigaku, the other was a boy named Zenitsu Agatsuma. Zenitsu was everything Kaigaku despised. Zenitsu was cowardly, constantly crying and complaining about how scared he was. Zenitsu had no confidence in himself. Zenitsu seemed weak and pathetic, but there was something about Zenitsu that Jigoro saw value in, something that made the old master spend extra time teaching him, encouraging him, believing in him. Kaigaku hated it. He hated that Jigoro paid attention to Zenitsu. He hated that this crying, sniveling coward was treated as an equal. Kaigaku believed he was clearly the superior student. He was confident, skilled, and strong. He learned quickly. He mastered the techniques. He believed he alone deserved to inherit Jigoro's legacy and become the next Thunder Hashira. Thunder breathing had 6 forms, 6 different techniques that made up the complete style. Kaigaku worked hard and managed to master 5 of them. The second form, Rice Spirit. The third form, Thunder Swarm. The fourth form, Distant Thunder. The fifth form, Heat Lightning. The sixth form, Rumble and Flash. He learned all of these techniques and performed them with skill and power. But there was one form he could not master, the first form, Thunderclap and Flash. This was the most basic, most fundamental technique of thunder breathing. It was the foundation upon which all the other forms were built. It involved drawing the sword and striking in a single, blindingly fast motion, and no matter how hard Kaigaku tried, he could not do it properly. Zenitsu, on the other hand, could only do the first form. He struggled with every other technique. He tried and failed over and over to learn the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth forms. But the first form, Thunderclap and Flash, Zenitsu mastered it completely. He practiced it thousands of times until he could perform it faster than almost anyone alive. He even created his own variations of it, different versions that he developed through pure dedication and hard work. This situation was humiliating for Kaigaku. Here he was, having mastered 5 of the 6 forms, and yet Zenitsu, who could only do 1 form, was still considered worthy of being Jigoro's student. Some other demon slayers even said that because Kaigaku could not do the first form, his other 5 techniques would never amount to much. They said the first form was so fundamental that without it, his thunder breathing was incomplete and flawed. Kaigaku's pride could not handle this. He began treating Zenitsu with open hostility. He would verbally abuse him, telling him that all the time Jigoro spent training him was wasted. He would say that it was infuriating to watch Zenitsu train. He would tell Zenitsu that he hated even looking at him, and that Zenitsu should just leave. He called Zenitsu a patch of mold that refused to let go. He made it clear that he believed Zenitsu was worthless and pathetic. But underneath all that hatred was fear. Fear that maybe Zenitsu was not as worthless as Kaigaku claimed. Fear that maybe Jigoro saw something in Zenitsu that he did not see in Kaigaku. Fear that maybe, just maybe, Kaigaku was not as superior as he wanted to believe. Jigoro had a plan. He wanted both of his students to inherit thunder breathing together. He wanted them to become the next generation, to share the title of Thunder Hashira, or at least to both become masters of the style in their own right. He saw value in both of them. He believed that Kaigaku's technical skill, combined with Zenitsu's pure-hearted determination, would create a new generation of thunder-breathing users. But Kaigaku could not accept this. The idea of sharing anything with Zenitsu was repulsive to him. He believed he alone deserved recognition. He believed that Jigoro was being foolish by wasting time on Zenitsu. Kaigaku's ego would not allow him to be anything less than the sole inheritor of thunder breathing. Despite his arrogance and his cruelty towards Zenitsu, Kaigaku completed his training and officially became a demon slayer. He wore the standard uniform of the Corps, the distinctive outfit that all demon slayers wore. He carried a Nichiren sword, a special blade designed to kill demons. He was given missions and sent out to fight demons and protect people. But Kaigaku never developed the mindset of a true demon slayer. Most people joined the Corps because they wanted to protect humanity, because they had lost loved ones to demons, because they believed in fighting evil. Kaigaku joined for selfish reasons. He wanted status. He wanted power. He wanted people to acknowledge his strength. He did not care about protecting anyone. He did not care about stopping demons. He only cared about himself. Then came Hashira training. This was a special intensive training program where lower-ranked demon slayers would train directly with the Hashira, the 9 strongest demon slayers in the entire Corps. It was meant to prepare everyone for the coming war against Muzan Kibutsuji, the demon king who commanded all demons. During this training period, Kaigaku was sent on a mission. The details of the mission are not entirely clear, but what is certain is that Kaigaku encountered Kokushibo, Upper Moon 1, the strongest demon in existence, aside from Muzan himself. Kokushibo was a former demon slayer from centuries ago who had betrayed humanity and become a demon. He was incredibly powerful, having lived for over 400 years and killed countless demon slayers over that time. When Kaigaku came face to face with Kokushibo, he knew immediately that he was completely outmatched. Kokushibo's power was overwhelming. His presence was suffocating. There was absolutely no chance that Kaigaku could win this fight. A true demon slayer, someone who believed in protecting humanity and had a strong will to fight, might have tried to battle anyway. They might have tried to at least buy time for others to escape, or to die with honor rather than surrender. But Kaigaku was not a true demon slayer. Kaigaku dropped to his knees. He begged for his life. He surrendered completely and immediately, placing himself at Kokushibo's mercy. He made it clear that he was willing to do anything if it meant he would survive. Kokushibo could have simply killed him. Most demons would have. But Kokushibo saw something in Kaigaku. He saw a demon slayer who used a breathing style. someone who had trained in the same kind of techniques that Kokushibo himself had once used as a human. Kokushibo had a high opinion of breathing style users, even demon slayers, because it reminded him of his own past. He also recognized that Kaigaku was a coward who would serve Muzan loyally out of fear and self-interest. So Kokushibo made Kaigaku an offer. He said that Kaigaku could become stronger. He could gain power beyond anything he had ever imagined. He could become immortal and never have to fear death again. All he had to do was become a demon. All he had to do was accept Kokushibo's blood and transform into the very thing he had supposedly sworn to fight against. Kaigaku did not hesitate. He accepted immediately. Kokushibo bit his own wrist and offered his blood to Kaigaku. When a human drinks demon blood, especially the blood of an upper-rank demon like Kokushibo, they begin to transform. However, humans who have trained in total concentration breathing, the foundation of all breathing styles, are more resistant to this transformation. Their bodies fight against the demon blood. They require a much larger amount of blood to actually turn into a demon, and the transformation is more painful and difficult. Kaigaku had to receive a tremendous amount of blood from Kokushibo to complete his transformation. The process was agonizing, but he endured it because the alternative was death. His body changed. His eyes turned green with black sclera. He grew fangs and sharp nails. Blue flame-like markings appeared on his cheeks. His skin became pale and sickly, but most importantly, he gained demonic powers and near immortality. As part of his transformation, Kaigaku developed a blood demon art, a special supernatural ability unique to powerful demons. His blood demon art perfectly complemented his thunder-breathing style. He gained the ability to generate and manipulate real lightning and electricity, not the visual effects that breathing styles created, but actual, genuine electricity that could burn and electrocute his opponents. He could channel this electricity through his sword, through his body, through his attacks. His thunder-breathing techniques, which had once been purely sword skills, now became devastating electrical attacks. Kaigaku created a new sword for himself, a blade made from his own flesh and blood, just as Kokushibo had done. But unlike Kokushibo's heavily distorted weapon, Kaigaku made his flesh sword look almost exactly like a normal Nichiren blade. This was a matter of pride for him. He still saw himself as a master swordsman, and he wanted his weapon to reflect that. His new sword had a yellow blade with black lightning patterns on it, an inverse of Zenitsu's black blade with yellow lightning patterns. For reasons that were never explained, Kaigaku placed his sword sheath on his back instead of at his waist, like most swordsmen. Some speculated that this unusual placement might have been one reason he had trouble with the first form of thunder breathing, as that form relied heavily on a quick draw from the waist. But as a demon, it no longer mattered. He had the power of electricity now, and that more than made up for his inability to perform thunderclap and flash. When someone becomes a demon, they usually forget much of their human life. Their memories fade, their human emotions and attachments disappear. But Kaigaku remembered everything. He remembered Jigoro. He remembered Zenitsu. He remembered his training, and he felt no remorse whatsoever. In fact, he was pleased with his choice. He believed he had won. He had survived when most people in his situation would have died. He had gained incredible power. He had proven that his philosophy of survival at any cost was correct. Back at the temple where Jigoro lived, the old man received news that shattered his heart. Kaigaku had become a demon. His student, one of the two young men he had spent years training, one of the two people he had hoped would inherit thunder breathing and carry it into the future, had betrayed everything they stood for. Kaigaku had thrown away his humanity, his honor, and his duty to become one of the monsters he was supposed to fight. Jigoro Kuwajima was devastated. He blamed himself. He felt that he had failed as a teacher. He felt that if he had been a better master, if he had taught Kaigaku better values, if he had somehow instilled more honor and integrity in him, then maybe this would not have happened. The shame was unbearable. Jigoro committed seppuku, a ritual suicide practiced by samurai and other warriors who had failed in their duty. He took his own life to take responsibility for his student's betrayal. This was the ultimate price of Kaigaku's cowardice. A kind old man who had done nothing wrong, who had only tried to teach and guide his students, died because one of those students chose to become a demon. Zenitsu was heartbroken when he learned what had happened. He had always looked up to his master, even though he had been terrified of the training. He had loved Jigoro like a grandfather. And now Jigoro was dead, having killed himself because of the shame Kaigaku brought upon them. Zenitsu's hatred for Kaigaku, which had once been tinged with a desire to be acknowledged by his senior, transformed into pure anger and determination. He swore that he would be the one to kill Kaigaku and avenge their master. After his transformation, Kaigaku was brought before Muzan Kibutsuji, the Demon King. Normally, becoming a demon and proving your strength would lead to joining the 12 Kizuki, the elite group of demons who served Muzan directly. However, Muzan was not particularly interested in breathing-style users at this point. He had other priorities. But circumstances created an opening for Kaigaku. Gyutaro and Daki, the siblings who had held the position of Upper Moon 6 for over a century, were killed by Tanjiro Kamado and the Demon Slayers in the Entertainment District. This left the Upper Moon 6 position vacant for the first time in 100 years. Muzan needed to fill this position quickly, and Kaigaku, despite being a newly transformed demon, was powerful enough to qualify. His combination of thunder-breathing mastery and his electrical blood demon art made him formidable. So Kaigaku became Upper Moon 6, the replacement for Gyutaro and Daki. The kanji for Upper Moon was carved into his right eye, and the number 6 was carved into his left eye. He was now officially one of the 12 Kizuki, one of the most powerful demons in existence. He had achieved the status and recognition he had always craved, even if it meant becoming a monster to get it. But Kaigaku had not been a demon for very long. He had only recently transformed, and he was still learning how to fully utilize his powers. According to Yushiro, a demon who fought alongside the Demon Slayers, Kaigaku had not yet mastered his techniques and abilities. If he had been given a year to grow and develop, he would have become truly terrifying, but he did not get that time. In the short period between his transformation and his final battle, Kaigaku killed and ate numerous humans. This was how demons grew stronger. The more humans they consumed, the more powerful they became. Kaigaku fed extensively, rapidly increasing his strength. He was trying to catch up to the other Upper Moons, trying to prove that he deserved his position. The final confrontation came in the Infinity Castle, Muzan's dimensional fortress, where the demons gathered for the climactic battle against the Demon Slayer Corps. The castle was a maze of shifting rooms and platforms, controlled by Nekime, the biwa-playing demon who could rearrange the architecture at will. Demon Slayers were transported into different parts of the castle, separated from each other, forced to face the Upper Moons in isolated battles. Zenitsu Agatsuma was transported into a room where Kaigaku was waiting. The two former fellow students now stood on opposite sides. One was still human, still fighting for what was right, despite his fear and self-doubt. The other had become a demon, had abandoned all principles in favor of power and survival. When Kaigaku saw Zenitsu, he smiled. He was genuinely happy to have this opportunity. He had always hated Zenitsu, had always resented him, and now he had the power to kill him. He mocked Zenitsu, asking him if he was not supposed to be their master's favorite. He told Zenitsu to show him what Jigoro had passed down to him. He said it was the only technique Zenitsu had, so he should use it with everything he had. Kaigaku also revealed something shocking. He was pleased that Jigoro had killed himself. He said that the old man deserved it for not recognizing that Kaigaku alone was worthy of inheriting thunder breathing. He showed no sadness, no remorse, no regret. He insulted Jigoro, calling him an old fart and saying he did not care about anyone who did not recognize his value. He said that people who acknowledged him were good and people who did not acknowledge him were evil. His entire worldview was centered on his own ego. The battle between them was intense. Kaigaku used all 5 of the thunder-breathing forms he had mastered, now enhanced with real electricity. He used second form, Rice Spirit, releasing arch slashes, accompanied by lightning. He used third form, Thunder Swarm, circling around Zenitsu and assaulting him from all directions with electrical attacks. He used fourth form, Distant Thunder, creating balls of electricity that released waves of lightning bolts. He used fifth form, Heat Lightning, which uniquely had red and black lightning instead of his usual blue and black coloring. He used sixth form, Rumble, and Flash, releasing powerful long-range lightning attacks that were difficult to avoid. Kaigaku's speed was incredible. As a thunder-breathing user, he specialized in quick movements and powerful strikes. As a demon, his physical abilities were enhanced far beyond human limits. He could keep up with Zenitsu, who himself was an extraordinarily fast fighter. The two of them clashed again and again, their blades creating sparks and flashes of light in the darkness of the Infinity Castle. But Zenitsu had something Kaigaku did not have. Zenitsu had pure dedication to a single technique. While Kaigaku had spread his efforts across 5 different forms, Zenitsu had focused entirely on perfecting the first form. He had practiced Thunderclap and Flash so many times that it had become second nature to him. He had developed his own variations of it, extensions of the basic technique that he created through pure determination and creativity. Zenitsu used his most powerful technique, one he had created himself. It was called Seventh Form, Flaming Thunder God. This was a technique that did not exist in traditional thunder breathing. This was Zenitsu's own creation, his personal addition to the style. It combined everything he had learned, all his speed and power, into a single devastating attack. Kaigaku tried to defend himself. He tried to counter with his own techniques, but Zenitsu was faster. In one perfect moment, moving at a speed that Kaigaku could not react to, Zenitsu's blade cut through Kaigaku's neck. Kaigaku's head separated from his body. As his body began to disintegrate, as death finally caught up with him, Kaigaku still believed he had won. He looked at Zenitsu, who was falling through a hole in the floor, and he laughed. He said that Zenitsu was going to die from the fall, which meant they would both die together. In Kaigaku's twisted mind, as long as his enemy died too, he had not lost. He believed that dying together was the same as a victory. But then, something happened that shattered Kaigaku's final delusion. Yushiro, a demon who fought on the side of humanity, appeared and caught Zenitsu. He saved Zenitsu from falling, ensuring that he would survive. Yushiro looked at the dying Kaigaku and mocked him. He said that Kaigaku would be given nothing because he had never learned how to give. He said that Kaigaku would die alone, without anyone mourning him, without anyone caring. He said that Kaigaku's fate was sealed the moment he let his ego take control of him. Kaigaku screamed in rage as the rest of his body disintegrated. He died, angry, frustrated, and completely unrepentant. Even at the very end, facing oblivion, he felt no remorse for his actions. He felt no guilt for betraying his master or for causing Jigoro's death. He died as he had lived, caring only about himself, believing only in his own survival, refusing to acknowledge that his choices had been wrong. Kaigaku's story is one of wasted potential. He had the talent to become a great demon slayer. He had the skill to master 5 of the 6 thunder-breathing forms. He had the intelligence to analyze his opponents and fight tactically, but he lacked the one thing that truly mattered: character. He lacked honor, loyalty, compassion, and self-sacrifice. He had nothing but his ego and his cowardice. He served as the perfect opposite to Zenitsu. Where Zenitsu was cowardly but self-aware and desperately wanted to improve, Kaigaku was arrogant and refused to acknowledge his own flaws. Where Zenitsu found friendship and companionship through Tanjiro, Nezuko, and Inosuke, Kaigaku was alone, with other demon slayers disliking his arrogance and cruelty. Where Zenitsu was willing to risk his life to protect others despite his fear, Kaigaku folded under pressure and chose survival over honor. The tragedy of Kaigaku is not that he suffered some terrible injustice that drove him to become a demon. The tragedy is that he was given every opportunity to become something better, and he threw it all away. Gyomei gave him a home and a family, and he betrayed them all to save himself. Jigoro gave him training, guidance, and a path to greatness, and he repaid that kindness by becoming a demon and causing his master's death. Zenitsu offered him brotherhood, someone who could have stood beside him as an equal, and he responded with nothing but hatred and contempt. Kaigaku chose to be Upper Moon 6. He chose cowardice over courage. He chose power over principle. He chose survival over honor. And in the end, he died alone, screaming in rage, without a single person mourning his passing. His name would be remembered only as a warning, an example of what happens when someone has talent but no character, when someone has strength but no heart. The saddest part is that even as a child living with Gyomei, Kaigaku seemed genuinely happy for a brief moment. He smiled, he laughed with the other children. He responded positively when Gyomei showed him affection. There was a version of Kaigaku that could have been a good person, that could have been a hero, that could have made his master proud. But that version was buried under layers of selfishness and fear, and it never had a chance to emerge. In Demon Slayer's world, many demons have tragic backstories that explain, if not excuse, their actions. Gyutaro and Daki suffered unimaginable poverty and cruelty. Akaza lost everyone he loved. Even Doma was born without the ability to feel emotions. But Kaigaku had no such excuse. He was given chances. He was given opportunities. He was given people who cared about him. And he spat on all of it because he valued his own life more than anything else. Kaigaku's final moments, screaming as Yushiro saved Zenitsu, represent the ultimate failure of his philosophy. He believed that as long as you survived, you won. He believed that any action was justified if it meant living one more day. But in the end, he died having accomplished nothing. He died without friends, without honor, without anyone to remember him fondly. He survived longer than he would have as a human. But what did that survival actually get him? A few months of power before being killed by the same person he had spent years mocking. Zenitsu, the person Kaigaku thought was weak and pathetic, turned out to be everything Kaigaku was not. Zenitsu was brave when it mattered. Zenitsu cherished his bonds with others. Zenitsu honored his master's memory by continuing to fight and improve. Zenitsu created his own technique, adding to thunder breathing instead of just using what he was taught. And most importantly, Zenitsu had people who cared about him, people who would save him, people who valued him not for his power but for his character. The position of Upper Moon 6 seemed cursed. Gyutaro and Daki held it for over a century before being killed by the Demon Slayers. Kaigaku replaced them and lasted only a short time before Zenitsu cut him down. The position that both sets of demons fought so hard to achieve ultimately meant nothing. They all died, they all lost, and the world moved on without them, better off for their absence. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Upper Moon, Todya, the artist who made art from death. Some demons became monsters because of tragedy. Others were monsters long before they ever met Muzan Kibutsuji. Gyoko was one of the latter. Even as a human child, he was fascinated by death, by corpses, by the beauty he saw in things that were dead and rotting. When he became a demon, he simply gained the power to pursue his twisted obsession on a much larger scale. He called himself an artist. Everyone else called him a nightmare. This is the story of Upper Moon 5, the demon who turned murder into what he believed was sublime art. Over 130 years ago, in a small fishing village on the coast of Japan, a boy was born. His name was Managi. His parents were fishermen who made their living by going out to sea and catching fish to sell at the market. It was hard work, dangerous work, but it was all they knew. Managi grew up surrounded by the ocean, by boats, by the smell of salt water and fish. It should have been a normal childhood for a boy in a fishing village, but Managi was not a normal child. When Managi was still young, his parents went out on a fishing trip like they had done countless times before. But this time, something went wrong. Maybe there was a storm. Maybe their boat had a problem. Maybe they simply had bad luck. Whatever the reason, Managi's parents drowned at sea. Days later, their bodies washed up on the shore. When bodies have been in the water for several days, they look terrible. The water bloats them. Fish and other sea creatures start to eat them. The skin turns strange colors. It is a disturbing, horrible sight that would traumatize most people, especially a child. The villagers found the bodies and were horrified. They quickly moved to prepare the bodies for burial, trying to give Managi's parents a proper funeral and trying to shield young Managi from the worst of it. But Managi did not look away. He stared at his parents' corpses. He studied them. He looked at every detail of their mangled, waterlogged bodies. And instead of feeling sad or horrified like a normal child would, Managi felt something else. He thought they were beautiful. This was when the villagers first realized that something was deeply wrong with Managi. A normal child would cry. A normal child would be traumatized. A normal child would have nightmares about seeing their parents' dead bodies. But Managi seemed fascinated. He seemed almost happy. He kept trying to go back and look at the corpses again. He talked about how interesting they looked, how the colors and textures were unlike anything he had seen before. The villagers were disturbed, but they tried to be understanding. They told themselves that Managi was in shock, that he was processing grief in a strange way, that he would eventually return to normal. They buried his parents and tried to help Managi adjust to being an orphan. Other families in the village took turns watching over him and making sure he had food to eat. But Managi did not return to normal. Instead, his behavior got worse. Managi started spending all his time near the water, but not to fish or to play like other children. He would walk along the shore looking for dead things, dead fish that had washed up, dead crabs, dead seagulls. Anything that was dead and rotting, Managi would collect it. He would take these corpses back to wherever he was staying, and he would stare at them for hours. He would touch them, examining the way the flesh had decayed, the way the bones showed through in certain places, the way the smell changed over time. He became obsessed with creating things from these dead animals. He would take different types of fish and sew them together, combining them into strange, unnatural forms. He would collect scales and bones and arrange them in patterns. He would put these creations into jars and pots, displaying them like they were treasures. To Managi, these were works of art. To everyone else, they were the creations of a deeply disturbed child. The other children in the village were frightened of Managi. They called him crazy. They said he was weird and creepy. They refused to play with him. The adults were not much better. They whispered about him when they thought he could not hear. They said there was something wrong with him, something broken in his mind. Some of them even suggested that maybe Managi had killed his own parents, even though that made no sense because he had been in the village when they drowned. The rumors and fear grew until Managi was almost completely isolated from the rest of the village. But the villagers made one critical mistake. They decided to largely ignore Managi rather than try to help him or deal with his disturbing behavior. They hoped that if they just left him alone, he would eventually move away, or at least stop bothering them with his morbid obsessions. They avoided him. They kept their children away from him, but they did not actually do anything to stop him. So Managi continued his obsession, growing bolder and more disturbed with each passing day. One day, one of the village children encountered Managi while he was working on one of his grotesque art pieces. The child, probably trying to act brave in front of friends or simply not understanding how dangerous Managi had become, started teasing him. The child mocked Managi's obsession with dead things. The child laughed at him and called him names. The child made fun of the strange creations Managi was so proud of. For Managi, This was unforgivable. His art was the only thing he cared about, the only thing that made him feel anything. Having someone mock it, having someone laugh at the things he found beautiful, triggered something inside him. All the isolation, all the whispers, all the years of being treated like an outcast came rushing to the surface. Managi's fragile pride shattered, and rage took its place. Managi killed the child. The details of exactly how he did it are not entirely clear, but what is certain is that Managi murdered the child who had teased him. And then, in an act that proved just how twisted his mind had become, Managi took the child's body and stuffed it into a jar. He treated the corpse like one of his fish, like one of his art pieces, like an object to be displayed and admired, rather than a human being who had been alive just moments before. When the child did not come home, the parents went looking. When they found out what Managi had done, when they saw their child's body stuffed into a jar like garbage, they were filled with horror and rage. They told the other villagers. A mob formed quickly. These were not patient people, interested in justice or understanding. These were frightened, angry villagers who wanted to punish the monster living among them. The villagers grabbed whatever weapons they could find. They surrounded Managi. They did not try to capture him or turn him over to authorities. They decided to take justice into their own hands. They stabbed him multiple times, their weapons piercing his body again and again. They left him lying on the ground, bleeding heavily from numerous wounds, expecting him to die within minutes, and they walked away, leaving Managi to bleed out alone. Managi lay there in his own blood, his life slowly draining away. He should have died. By all rights, he should have been dead within an hour at most, but somehow, Managi clung to life. He lay there, suffering for hours, too weak to move, too injured to call for help, simply waiting for death to finally claim him. Half a day passed. The sun moved across the sky. Managi's blood pooled around him, and still, somehow, he remained alive. That was when Muzan Kibutsuji found him. Muzan was the first demon, the demon king, the source of all demons in the world. He had been alive for over 1,000 years, constantly searching for ways to overcome his weaknesses and achieve true immortality. He traveled throughout Japan, sometimes killing humans for food, sometimes turning humans into demons to serve him, always pursuing his goals with ruthless efficiency. When Muzan came across Managi lying in a pool of blood, barely clinging to life, he saw potential. Here was a human who was already twisted, already obsessed with death and corpses, already capable of murder without remorse. Muzan recognized that Managi's disturbed mind might make him an interesting demon, and besides, Muzan enjoyed the irony of giving life to someone the villagers had tried to kill. Muzan offered Managi a choice, though it was not much of a choice given that Managi was dying. He could die there in the dirt, alone and forgotten, his body becoming just another corpse like the ones he had obsessed over. Or he could accept Muzan's blood, transform into a demon, and gain the power to pursue his obsessions forever, without fear of death or weakness. Managi, even while dying, even while in tremendous pain, did not hesitate. He wanted to live. He wanted to continue creating his art. He wanted revenge on the people who had stabbed him and left him to die. He accepted Muzan's offer eagerly. The transformation from human to demon is always painful, but Managi endured it. His body changed dramatically. His wounds healed, but his form became twisted and grotesque. His body took on a bizarre appearance, becoming a pale white, abstract, humanoid figure that grew from a porcelain vase like some kind of supernatural creature from ancient legends. He lost his legs entirely, his lower body becoming a tail-like extension. He developed multiple, small, infant-like hands on his head and body. His face became distorted, with mouths where his eyes should be, and his actual eyes positioned vertically on his face. But more importantly, Managi gained supernatural powers. He gained a blood demon art, a special ability unique to powerful demons. His blood demon art revolved around creating and controlling porcelain vases and pots. He could spawn these vases anywhere he wanted. He could teleport from one pot to another instantly. He could trap people inside his pots, compressing them to fit, no matter their size. He could summon monsters from his pots, fish-like creatures with various abilities. He could create water from his pots and control it with deadly precision. Managi took on a new name as a demon, Gyoko, which combined the characters for jewel and pot. It was a fitting name for someone whose entire existence now revolved around creating and using vases. The Gyo in his name was also pronounced the same as the word for fish in Japanese, which connected to his obsession with marine life and the fishing village where he had grown up. As a demon, Gyoko's twisted sense of art did not go away, it only got worse. Now he had supernatural powers, immortality, and incredible strength. Now, he could create art on a scale he had only dreamed of as a human, and the art he wanted to create required human corpses as materials. Gyoko began killing humans, not just for food, but for artistic purposes. He would murder people, and then used their bodies as the raw materials for his creations. He would mangle corpses together in impossible ways, combining them into grotesque sculptures that he genuinely believed were beautiful. He would stuff bodies into his pots. He would arrange body parts in patterns. He would create displays of death that he considered to be sublime works of art. One of his most infamous creations was something he called Death Throes of the Smiths. He found several swordsmiths, people who made the special weapons used by demon slayers, and he brutally attacked them. But instead of simply killing them quickly, Gyoko kept them alive. He mangled their bodies together, twisting limbs and torsos in unnatural positions, sticking swords through them at various angles. He created a horrific sculpture made of living, suffering humans. He was proud of it. He displayed it like it was a masterpiece, smiling as he described all the features of his work, including how you could twist the swords to cause the victims even more pain and bleeding. This was the level of sadism and cruelty that Gyoko operated at. He did not just kill his victims, he made them suffer. He turned their suffering into what he believed was art, and he genuinely could not understand why anyone would find his creations disturbing rather than beautiful. Gyoko's skill at creating more traditional pottery and vases was actually quite impressive from a technical standpoint. Even though the themes and contents were horrific, his craftsmanship was excellent. Muzan Kibutsuji recognized this and actually took some of Gyoko's vases to sell to wealthy humans who had no idea they were buying demon-made pottery. These vases sold for extremely high prices, making Gyoko one of Muzan's favorite upper moons. Muzan valued any demon who could be useful beyond just killing demon slayers, and Gyoko's pottery actually made Muzan money. Over the course of more than 100 years as a demon, Gyoko killed countless humans. He ate many of them for sustenance, as all demons must do to maintain their power. But he also killed many purely for his art. Whenever he dined on children specifically, he would modify his own body, incorporating aspects of his victims into himself in ways that only he understood or appreciated. Gyoko's personality as a demon was extremely unpleasant. He was arrogant and narcissistic, constantly praising himself and his work. He called himself beautiful. He called his art sublime and perfect. He looked down on everyone except Muzan, viewing other demons as beneath him, and viewing humans as worthless creatures, whose only value was as materials for his art. He was also extremely short-tempered, especially when it came to his art. If anyone dared to insult or question the quality of his work, Gyoko would fly into a rage. His pride was incredibly fragile, despite all his boasting. He could not handle any criticism. He believed that anyone who did not appreciate his art was simply too stupid and uncultured to understand its magnificence. This combination of arrogance and fragile pride would ultimately contribute to his downfall. Gyoko rose through the ranks of demonkind through his power and his usefulness to Muzan. He eventually achieved the position of Upper Moon 5, making him the 5th strongest demon in existence. This position came with great prestige and power. The Upper Moons were the elite demons who had survived for decades or even centuries, who had killed numerous demon slayers, including the powerful Hashira. Being Upper Moon 5 meant Gyoko was stronger than Upper Moon 6, Gyutaro, and Daki, who had killed 22 Hashira combined, and he was only surpassed by Upper Moons 4 through 1. The final battle for Gyoko came during the Swordsmith Village arc. The Demon Slayer Corps had a secret village where swordsmiths lived and worked, creating the special Nichiren swords that demon slayers needed to fight demons. This village's location was kept hidden for obvious reasons. If demons found it, they could slaughter the swordsmiths and cripple the Demon Slayer Corps' ability to fight. But somehow, the location was discovered. Muzan sent 2 Upper Moons to attack the village, Antengu Upper Moon 4 and Gyoko Upper Moon 5. Their mission was simple: kill all the swordsmiths, destroy the village, and weaken the Demon Slayer Corps permanently. Gyoko was excited about this mission. He saw it as an opportunity to create even more art using the swordsmiths as materials. He unleashed his powers on the village, spawning massive fish-like monsters from his pots to terrorize the inhabitants. These creatures killed several of the demon slayers who were stationed at the village to guard it. Gyoko reveled in the chaos and destruction, but there were 2 Hashira present at the village, 2 of the strongest demon slayers in the entire corps. One was Mitsuri Kanroji, the Love Hashira. The other was Muichiro Tokito, the Mist Hashira. Muichiro was still very young, only 14 years old, but he was already considered one of the most talented swordsmen in the Corps' history. Muichiro encountered Gyoko while trying to protect the village and the swordsmiths. The battle between them showcased both Gyoko's power and his fatal flaws as a fighter. Gyoko was genuinely powerful. His ability to teleport between pots made him extremely difficult to hit. He could spawn monsters to attack from multiple angles. He could shoot poisonous needles that would paralyze his opponents. He could create water prisons to drown his enemies. He could summon giant tentacles to restrain people. He had an enormous arsenal of techniques at his disposal. When Muichiro tried to attack him, Gyoko easily dodged and counterattacked. He trapped Muichiro in a water prison, a special vase made entirely of water that would slowly suffocate anyone trapped inside. This water prison was designed to prevent the victim from using breathing techniques, which were essential for demon slayers to fight at their full strength. Muichiro was trapped, slowly drowning, unable to break free because the water was too dense and elastic to cut through with a sword. Gyoko was thrilled. He believed he had won. He mocked Muichiro, asking if the poison from his earlier attacks had paralyzed the Hashira's arms and legs. He called it humorous that Muichiro had tried to save worthless lives and would now lose his own life in a worthless place. He could not resist boasting about his superiority. But Gyoko made a crucial mistake. He got distracted. While Muichiro was trapped and seemingly helpless, Gyoko noticed Hotaru Haganezuka, a swordsmith who was working on polishing a sword nearby. Haganezuka was so focused on his work that he did not even notice the battle happening around him. He did not run away when monsters attacked. He did not stop working when Gyoko tried to threaten him. He just kept polishing the sword with complete dedication, totally absorbed in his craft. Gyoko became enraged by this. Here was someone who was even more obsessed with their work than Gyoko was with his art. Haganezuka's focus and dedication surpassed Gyoko's own. This made Gyoko jealous. His petty, fragile ego could not handle the idea that someone else might be more devoted to their craft than he was. So, instead of finishing off Muichiro, instead of securing his victory, Gyoko decided to waste time attacking Haganezuka. He wanted to break the swordsmith's concentration. He wanted to prove that his art was superior. He summoned fish demons with scythe-like appendages to threaten Haganezuka. He attacked the shed where Haganezuka was working. He tried over and over to make Haganezuka stop working and pay attention to him. This gave other people time to rescue Muichiro from the water prison. A young boy named Kotetsu and another swordsmith named Kozo Kanamori worked together to break Muichiro out of the vase. It took them considerable effort because the water was so dense, but eventually they succeeded. Muichiro was freed, able to breathe again, able to fight again, and Muichiro was angry. While Muichiro had been trapped and drowning, he had regained memories from his past that he had forgotten. He remembered his family, he remembered his purpose, he remembered why he became a demon slayer. These memories filled him with determination and awakened something inside him, a demon slayer mark. Demon slayer marks were special markings that appeared on the strongest demon slayers, dramatically enhancing their physical abilities. When Muichiro awakened his mark, his speed, strength, and reflexes all increased dramatically. He became much more powerful than he had been just minutes before. Gyoko did not realize this at first. When Muichiro attacked him again, moving much faster than before, Gyoko was caught by surprise. Muichiro's sword slashed into Gyoko's neck, cutting partway through. But Gyoko's body was extremely durable, and even with the demon slayer mark enhancing Muichiro's strength, the sword could not cut all the way through. It got stuck partway, and Muichiro's blade was badly chipped by the impact. Gyoko laughed at this failed attempt. He mocked Muichiro, saying that a single slash was not enough to kill him. He boasted about his superiority, and then he decided to reveal his trump card. Gyoko transformed into his true form. Like many powerful demons, Gyoko had the ability to undergo a transformation that dramatically increased his power. When he molted, shedding his outer layer, he revealed his true body. In this form, Gyoko resembled a merman or sea serpent. He gained a more humanoid upper body with 2 large, muscular arms instead of his many tiny hands. His lower body became a long, serpentine tail. His entire body became covered in scales that he claimed were harder than diamond. He grew fins like a mane around his head and down his back. In this form, Gyoko was significantly more powerful. He was faster, stronger, and more durable. He could fight in close combat using his bare hands, and he gained a new ability called godlike hands. Anything his fist touched would instantly transform into fish. This made him extremely dangerous at close range because even blocking one of his punches could result in having parts of your body turned into fish. Gyoko also revealed that very few people had ever seen this form. Only 3 people total had witnessed his true transformation, and presumably the other 2 had died. He was arrogant about this, believing that showing his true form guaranteed his victory. The battle intensified. Gyoko used his serpentine body to move at incredible speeds, slithering and gliding around Muichiro with unpredictable movements. He attacked from odd angles, making his strikes difficult to predict or dodge. He used his scales to create red, crescent-shaped physical attacks that could level trees. He tried again and again to land a punch with his transmutative fists, knowing that a single touch would end the fight. Muichiro, however, had the advantage of the Demon Slayer mark. Despite Gyoko's increased power, Muichiro was able to keep up with his speed and react to his attacks. The young Hashira analyzed Gyoko's fighting style, looking for openings, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But what really doomed Gyoko was not Muichiro's skill or power. What doomed Gyoko was his own arrogance. Throughout the entire fight, even while in his true form, even while supposedly fighting seriously, Gyoko could not stop talking. He kept boasting about his superiority. He kept insulting Muichiro, calling him an inferior life form, calling humans weak and worthless. He went on long rants about how he was a chosen being, a superior entity, an artist whose work was sublime and perfect. He bragged about how his godly hands had turned worthless human lives into art. Muichiro, in contrast, used a tactic that proved remarkably effective against Gyoko. He insulted Gyoko's art. Muichiro made fun of Gyoko's vases. He called them ugly. He said they looked like something a child would make. He treated Gyoko's prized creations as worthless garbage. This drove Gyoko absolutely insane with rage. He was already bleeding from blood vessels due to sheer fury. His concentration broke, his movements became sloppier, his tactics became less effective. He was so focused on defending the reputation of his art and proving his superiority that he stopped fighting intelligently. And that was when Muichiro struck. Using a technique called obscuring clouds, the seventh form of mist breathing, Muichiro created a massive mist that completely obscured Gyoko's vision. In that moment when Gyoko could not see, when he was blinded by both the mist and his own rage, Muichiro moved at incredible speed. His blade sliced cleanly through Gyoko's neck, decapitating him. For most demons, decapitation by a Nichiren sword means instant death, but Gyoko was an upper moon, one of the most powerful demons in existence. Even with his head cut off, he tried to regenerate. His body attempted to grow a new head. His decapitated head tried to grow a new body from the stump of his neck, but Muichiro did not give him the chance. Before Gyoko could complete his regeneration, Muichiro attacked again and again, slicing the demon's body and head into countless small pieces. He cut so quickly and so many times that Gyoko's regeneration could not keep up. The pieces became smaller and smaller until they were too small to regenerate from. As Gyoko's body disintegrated into ash, as death finally claimed him, he went on one last rant. He screamed about how this should not be possible, how he should not be losing to a mere human. He called Muichiro a horrible lower life form. He said he was worth 100 of Muichiro. He claimed he was a chosen, superior being. He ranted about how his godly hands had turned worthless human lives into sublime art. He called the humans he had tortured and killed ungrateful maggots. Even in death, even as his body turned to ash and his consciousness faded, Gyoko felt no remorse. He felt no guilt for the people he had murdered. He felt no shame for the suffering he had caused. He only felt outrage that he was losing, that someone he viewed as inferior had defeated him. His last thoughts were not of regret or reflection, but of pride and anger. Muichiro cut Gyoko's decapitated head in half, just to make him stop talking. The demon's body completely disintegrated, and Upper Moon 5 was dead. Gyoko's story is particularly disturbing because, unlike many other demons, his evil was not born from tragedy or injustice. Yes, his parents died when he was young, and that was unfortunate. But many people lose their parents and do not become serial killers. Gyoko's fascination with death and corpses, his complete lack of empathy for other living beings, his ability to murder a child and feel no remorse, all of these things were present in him even before his parents died. The death of his parents simply gave his already twisted mind something to fixate on. It provided the initial spark for his obsession with corpses and death, but the darkness was already there inside him. Becoming a demon just gave him the power and immortality to pursue his sick obsessions on a grand scale for over a century. What makes Gyoko's story even more tragic is that he genuinely believed his art was beautiful and valuable. In his mind, he was creating sublime masterpieces that lesser beings simply could not appreciate. He thought he was an artist, a creator, someone who saw beauty where others saw only horror. This delusion protected him from ever feeling guilt or questioning his actions. He never had a moment of realization like some other demons did. He never remembered his humanity with sadness. He died still believing he was superior, still believing his art was perfect, still viewing his victims as nothing more than raw materials. The villagers who stabbed young Managi and left him to die probably thought they were solving a problem. They thought they were punishing a murderer and protecting their community, but their actions created something far worse. If they had properly dealt with Managi's disturbed behavior earlier, if they had actually tried to help him or at least contained him properly, maybe things would have turned out differently. Instead, they left him to suffer alone, and Muzan found him and turned him into a monster with supernatural powers. For over 100 years, Gyoko terrorized humans, turning them into grotesque art pieces, killing swordsmiths to weaken the Demon Slayer core, serving Muzan faithfully. He was one of the upper moons, one of the most feared demons in existence, and in the end, he was killed by a 14-year-old boy who insulted his art and made him too angry to fight effectively. Gyoko's arrogance and fragile ego, the very traits that defined him, were what allowed Muichiro to defeat him. If Gyoko had simply focused on fighting instead of boasting, if he had ignored the insults and stayed calm, if he had not wasted time attacking Haganezuka out of petty jealousy, he might have won. But he could not do any of those things because they required self-control and humility, two qualities Gyoko completely lacked. His death served as a reminder that power and skill are not enough. Intelligence matters. Emotional control matters. Being able to prioritize objectives over personal pride matters. Gyoko had tremendous power, over a century of experience, and a versatile set of abilities. But he was so consumed by his own ego, so convinced of his own superiority, that he made fatal mistakes and paid the ultimate price. The world became a better place when Gyoko died. Every human he would have killed in the future was spared. Every horrible art piece he would have created was prevented. The swordsmiths of the village could continue their work, and Muichiro Tokito, the young Hashira who had defeated one of the most powerful demons in existence, proved that even the upper moons could be killed. Gyoko's legacy was one of cruelty, suffering, and a twisted perspective that saw beauty in death and art in murder. He was a monster who called himself an artist, a sadist who called himself sublime, a demon who looked down on all life while being utterly worthless himself. And when he died, no one mourned him. The world simply moved on, better off without him. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Nakime, the musician whose art required murder. Most demons killed because they were hungry or because they enjoyed causing pain. Nakime killed for a different reason. She killed because murder made her music beautiful. She was a struggling artist who discovered that the trauma of taking a life caused her hands to shake in just the right way, producing sounds that audiences loved. So, she made killing part of her artistic process, murdering someone before every performance to achieve that perfect trembling tension. This is the story of the Biwa demon, the woman who controlled the Infinity Castle and became Upper Moon 4. Over 100 years ago, there lived a woman who dreamed of being a successful musician. Her name was Nakime. She played the biwa, a traditional Japanese stringed instrument similar to a lute. The biwa had 4 strings and was played with a large flat pick called a bachi. It was an ancient instrument with a long history in Japanese culture, often used to accompany storytelling or played as solo performances. Nakime was an amateur musician, someone who performed at small venues for modest pay. She was not famous, she was not wealthy, she was obscure, unknown, struggling to make enough money to survive. Every coin she earned came from performing at stages where audiences were not particularly impressed or interested. She had to work constantly just to have enough to eat and a place to sleep. But Nakime had passion for her music. She practiced her biwa regularly. She tried to improve her skills. She wanted to become a great performer, someone people would pay to see, someone who could make a living from her art. She had dreams of better performances, better stages, better audiences. She wanted her music to move people, to make them feel something special. Unfortunately, Nakime made a terrible mistake. She married a man who would destroy any chance she had at achieving her dreams. Her husband was addicted to gambling. Gambling in Japan during this era was common but often ruinous. People would bet on dice games, card games, and various other games of chance. Some people gambled occasionally for entertainment, but Nakime's husband was completely consumed by his addiction. He gambled constantly. He could not stop himself even when he lost everything. He would bet money they needed for food. He would bet money they needed for rent. He would bet anything he could get his hands on, and he never won. Or if he did win, he would just gamble those winnings away, trying to win more. He was trapped in a cycle of losing, desperately trying to win back what he had lost, and losing even more. It was a nightmare that pulled both of them down into poverty. Nakime worked hard to earn money from her performances. She saved what little she could. She tried to build a better life for them, but her husband would take that money and gamble it away. He squandered her earnings, he wasted her savings, and he contributed absolutely nothing to improve their lives. He did not work, he did not help, he just took everything she earned and threw it away, chasing the next bet. Nakime grew to resent him deeply. She hated watching her hard work disappear into his addiction. She hated living in poverty because he could not control himself. She hated that her dreams of becoming a successful musician were being destroyed by his selfishness. But in that era, women had limited options. Divorce was difficult and came with severe social consequences. She felt trapped in this terrible marriage with no way out. Then came the night that changed everything. Nakime had a performance scheduled at a particular stage. This was an important performance for her, a chance to play for a decent audience and potentially earn more recognition. She needed to look presentable. She needed to dress appropriately. For a biwa performer, appearance mattered almost as much as skill. Audiences expected a certain level of presentation. Nakime owned one good kimono that she used specifically for performances. It was not expensive or fancy, but it was clean and appropriate for the stage. She had saved carefully to purchase it. She kept it safe and only wore it for performances. It was one of her most important possessions because without it, she could not perform properly. On the night of her scheduled performance, Nakime went to get her kimono and discovered it was gone. She searched everywhere. She tore through their small home looking for it. Panic started to set in as she realized what had happened. Her husband had taken it. He had stolen her performance kimono, the one possession she needed to do her job, and he had gambled it away. Nakime confronted him. He admitted what he had done, without shame or apology. He had needed something to bet because he had no money left. He had taken her kimono, used it as collateral, or sold it to get gambling money, and he had lost. The kimono was gone. There was no way to get it back, and he did not care. He did not care that he had destroyed her chance at this performance. He did not care that he had stolen something irreplaceable from her. He did not care about anything except his addiction. Something inside Nakime snapped. All the years of frustration, all the resentment, all the anger at watching him destroy their lives, it all came flooding out in one terrible moment. She looked at this man who had taken everything from her, who had ruined her dreams, who had just stolen the one thing she needed to perform, and she made a decision. Nakime grabbed a hammer. Before her husband could react, before he could defend himself or run away, she attacked him. She beat him to death with that hammer, swinging it again and again in blind rage. She killed him. She murdered her own husband in their home, ending his life in a burst of violence fueled by years of accumulated hatred. When the rage cleared, and Nakime realized what she had done, she looked at the corpse of her husband, lying on the floor. She had committed murder. The penalty for murder was death. If anyone discovered what she had done, she would be arrested and executed. But strangely, Nakime did not feel remorse. She did not feel guilt. She felt relief. The man who had been dragging her down was finally gone. The addiction that had ruined her life could not hurt her anymore. But she still had a practical problem. She had a performance to get to, and it was approaching quickly. She had no time to properly deal with the body or clean up the scene. She needed to get to the stage or she would lose the opportunity and the payment. So Nakime did what she had to do. She found an old, worn-out, tattered kimono that was all she had left, put it on, and rushed to the performance. When Nakime arrived at the stage, the audience immediately noticed her shabby appearance. They gave her disapproving looks. They whispered to each other about how poor and unkempt she looked. A performer was supposed to look refined and elegant, not like a beggar wearing rags. The stage owner looked unhappy. This was not the impression they wanted to make, but Nakime was already there, and they had advertised that there would be a biwa performance, so they let her play. Nakime sat down with her biwa. She positioned her instrument properly. She held her bachi pick in her hand, and as she prepared to play, the full reality of what she had just done hit her. She had murdered someone. She had killed her husband less than an hour ago. His body was still lying in their home. The sensation of committing murder for the first time was still fresh and raw in her mind. The memory of the hammer striking him, the sound it made, the sight of his body falling, all of it replayed in her thoughts. Her hands began to shake. She felt tremendous tension and nervousness. The trauma of what she had done caused her fingers to tremble as she touched the strings of her biwa. She started to play, expecting it to sound terrible because of her shaking hands. But something unexpected happened. The sound that came from the biwa was beautiful. The trembling in her hands created an effect on the strings that the audience had never heard before. The notes had a quality to them, a subtle vibration and tension that was hauntingly lovely. The music sounded emotional and powerful in a way that Nakime's performances had never sounded before. It was extraordinary. The audience stopped whispering. They stopped judging her shabby appearance. They leaned forward and listened intently. The music captivated them. They were moved by what they heard. When Nakime finished playing, instead of polite applause, the audience erupted in genuine enthusiasm. They shouted for an encore. They demanded she play more. They praised her performance as the best they had heard. The customers loved it. The stage owner was thrilled. Nakime was paid handsomely, far more than she usually earned. People complimented her extensively. They asked when she would perform again. They said her playing had touched them deeply. The performance was an unexpected, extraordinary success. Nakime walked home that night with more money than she had earned in months, and she understood exactly why the performance had been so successful. It was not because she had suddenly gained new technical skill. It was because she had killed someone right before playing. The trauma, the tension, the nervousness from committing murder had caused her hands to shake in just the right way. That shaking had produced the beautiful sound that audiences loved. This realization did not horrify Nakime. It did not make her question her actions or feel guilt. Instead, it gave her an idea. If murdering her husband had made her play so beautifully once, then murdering someone before every performance would make her play beautifully every time. All she had to do was kill someone, experience that fresh trauma and tension, and then perform while her hands were still shaking. It was a simple formula for success. Murder equals beautiful, music equals money and recognition. So Nakime developed a disturbing habit. Before each performance for large audiences, she would kill someone. She was careful about it. She did not kill the same way every time. She did not establish a pattern that would make it easy to connect the murders to her. She chose victims somewhat randomly, people who would not be immediately missed or whose deaths might look like accidents or robberies. She committed these murders quickly and efficiently, then went straight to her performances. Every single time, the formula worked. The trauma of killing someone would cause her hands to shake with tension. That shaking would create the unique sound that audiences adored. Her performances would receive extraordinarily positive feedback. She was paid well. Her reputation grew. People started requesting her specifically for their events. She was becoming the successful musician she had always dreamed of being. Nakime did not feel bad about the people she killed. To her, they were tools. They were necessary components of her artistic process. A painter needs paint, a sculptor needs clay. Nakime needed to commit murder before she could create beautiful music. It was that simple in her mind. The lives she took were the price of her art, and she was willing to pay that price without hesitation. This routine continued for some time. Nakime would get scheduled for a performance. She would find someone to kill. She would commit the murder. She would go play her biwa with trembling hands. The audience would love it. She would get paid. Then she would wait for the next performance and repeat the process. She became known as a talented biwa player whose performances had an emotional depth that other musicians could not match. People did not know why her music sounded so special. They did not know about the murders. They just knew that when Nakime played, something about it touched them in a way that other performances did not. Her music had an edge to it, a tension and vulnerability that felt authentic because it was authentic. She was playing while traumatized, and that trauma came through in the music. Then came the fateful day when Nakime made a terrible mistake. She had another performance scheduled. She needed to kill someone to achieve the right state of mind. She went out looking for a victim, someone she could murder quickly before heading to the stage. She needed to choose carefully because timing mattered. She needed to kill someone close enough to the performance time that the trauma would still be fresh, but far enough away that she would have time to get to the stage. Nakime spotted a man walking alone. She did not know who he was. She did not care who he was. He was simply a target, another necessary sacrifice for her art. She approached him with the intention of killing him quickly and quietly, just like she had done many times before. She attacked. She tried to kill him, but she failed. The man she had chosen was not a normal human. The man was Muzan Kibutsuji, the Demon King, the first demon, the most powerful being in Japan. He was essentially immortal, incredibly strong, and completely impossible for a normal human to harm, let alone kill. Nakime's attack did nothing to him except get his attention. Muzan could have killed Nakime instantly. He could have torn her apart in seconds. Most people who attacked Muzan died immediately and painfully, but Muzan was curious. He looked at this woman who had just tried to murder him, and instead of being angry, he was impressed. Muzan was impressed by Nakime's searching skills. She had managed to find him, to get close to him, to locate him when many others could not. Muzan was always moving, always hiding, always avoiding detection. The fact that this random woman had stumbled upon him and gotten close enough to attempt an attack demonstrated that she had some useful ability, even if she did not realize it. He was also pleased by what she had done. The boldness of attacking a stranger without hesitation, the willingness to commit murder casually as part of a routine, the complete lack of remorse or moral conflict, all of this indicated that Nakime had the mindset of someone who could serve him well. So, instead of killing Nakime, Muzan made her an offer. He explained what he was. He told her he was a demon, the king of all demons, a being who had lived for over 1,000 years. He told her he could give her power, immortality, strength beyond human limits. All she had to do was accept his blood and transform into a demon. Nakime understood immediately that this was an opportunity. She had been killing people to make her music beautiful. As a demon, she could continue killing without fear of being caught or executed. She could continue her art forever. She would never age, never die, never lose her ability to perform, and she would gain supernatural powers that would make her even more capable. Nakime accepted Muzan's offer without hesitation. She drank his blood. The transformation from human to demon began. The transformation was agonizing. but Nakime endured it. Her body changed dramatically. Her skin became pale with a grayish complexion. Her lips turned dark pink. Her nails became sharp and stained blue. Her hair grew long and glossy, reaching down to her hips. And most dramatically, she lost one of her eyes entirely. Where she once had two normal human eyes, she now had a single large eye positioned in the center of where her face would be, hidden beneath long bangs that obscured it. But more importantly, Nakime gained a blood demon art, a supernatural ability unique to powerful demons. Her blood demon art was extraordinary. She gained the ability to create and control an entire alternate dimension called the Infinity Castle. The Infinity Castle was a fortress of immense scale, existing in its own separate dimension. It had countless rooms of seemingly endless variety. The architecture defied normal physics. Rooms could be positioned at any angle. Gravity could shift. Walls could become floors. The entire space was impossibly vast and constantly changing. And Nakime, as its owner and creator, had complete control over every aspect of it. By playing her Baiwa, Nakime could manipulate the Infinity Castle. She could shift rooms around. She could change the orientation of spaces. She could create new rooms or close off existing ones. She could make hallways extend or contract. She had absolute power over this entire dimension, shaping it however she wished with just a few notes on her instrument. She could also teleport people in and out of the Infinity Castle. She could summon anyone to her dimension instantly, pulling them from the outside world into her fortress. She could transport them from one part of the castle to another. She could send them back to the outside world wherever she chose. This made her incredibly valuable to Muzan as a means of transportation and organization. Nakime could create portals in the form of sliding tatami doors that would open beneath people's feet or appear in front of them, instantly transporting them into the Infinity Castle. These portals could be used offensively to trap enemies or defensively to escape danger. She had complete control over who entered and left her dimension. Nakime climbed through the demon ranks quickly. Her unique abilities made her one of Muzan's most valuable servants. While she was not particularly powerful in direct combat compared to other strong demons, her utility was undeniable. She became the keeper of the Infinity Castle, the being who maintained and controlled Muzan's fortress and headquarters. She sat at the center of the castle, her position distorted by the space around her, playing her biwa to manipulate everything. Muzan used Nakime extensively. Whenever he needed to summon demons for meetings, Nakime would transport them to the Infinity Castle. When lower-ranked demons needed to face Muzan's judgment, Nakime brought them to him. When upper-ranked demons needed to gather, Nakime coordinated their arrival. When Muzan wanted to move somewhere quickly and secretly, Nakime provided transportation. Nakime became known as the Biwa demon because she was always seen with her instrument. She sat motionless in the center of the Infinity Castle, her biwa on her lap, her single large eye hidden beneath her bangs, waiting for orders. She rarely spoke. She displayed almost no emotion. She was aloof and taciturn, existing only to follow Muzan's commands without question or hesitation. Her personality as a demon was completely different from most other demons. She was not violent or sadistic like Yoko. She was not arrogant like Kaigaku. She was not emotional like Daki. She simply existed, silent and emotionless, serving Muzan with absolute loyalty. She obeyed every order perfectly. She never complained. She never questioned. She was the ideal servant from Muzan's perspective, a powerful tool that did exactly what it was told. Muzan valued this loyalty immensely. In one of the very few instances where Muzan ever complimented anyone, he praised Nakime for her rapid growth and usefulness. He told her that her unwavering loyalty to him was appreciated. Nakime, in turn, graciously accepted his words and said she was honored to be of great use to him. This exchange was remarkable because Muzan almost never praised anyone. The fact that he acknowledged Nakime's value showed how important she had become to his operations. When Hantengu, Upper Moon 4, was killed during the battle at the Swordsmith village, a position opened up in the 12 Kizuki. Muzan promoted Nakime to fill that position. She became Upper Moon 4, the fourth strongest demon in existence. The number 4 was engraved into her single large eye, marking her new rank. Her bangs were swept aside so the number would be visible, revealing the upper portion of her face, which appeared darker gray than the rest of her skin, with prominent veins surrounding her eye. As Upper Moon 4, Nakime gained additional abilities. She received more of Muzan's blood, which enhanced her powers. She developed the ability to detach eyeball familiars from her body. These were small, floating eyeballs that she could control remotely. She could create hundreds of these eyeballs and spread them across Japan to spy on people from long distances. Nakime used this new ability to locate the members of the Demon Slayer Corps. She sent her eyeball familiars throughout the country, watching Demon Slayers, tracking their movements, determining their locations. She was able to find nearly all members of the Corps, including discovering the hidden location of Kagaya Ubuyashiki's mansion, something that had been kept secret even from high-ranking members of the organization. To control all these eyeballs simultaneously, Nakime rooted her hair to the walls of the Infinity Castle like extremities. These hair roots acted like additional nerves, allowing her to process all the visual information from hundreds of eyeballs at once and manipulate them remotely from vast distances. If one eyeball became significantly damaged, it would disintegrate, but she could always create more. Nakime's final mission came during the climactic battle between Muzan and the Demon Slayer Corps. When the Corps attacked Muzan at the Ubuyashiki mansion, Nakime opened portals beneath all of them, transporting the entire Corps into the Infinity Castle. She then used her control over the castle to separate them, splitting up the Hashira and other demon slayers so they would face the upper moons in isolated battles. Two Hashira, Obanai, Iguro, and Mitsuri Kanroji, were sent to fight Nakime directly. They tried to reach her and behead her, which would presumably destroy the Infinity Castle, or at least disrupt its control. But Nakime made this nearly impossible. She constantly shifted the rooms around them, changing the orientation of the space, making walls become floors and floors become ceilings. She created pillars and rammed them into the Hashira to crush them. She tried to trick them into falling to their deaths. The two Hashira could not even get close to scratching Nakime. Her control over the environment was absolute. She could attack them from any direction. She could defend herself by moving away or creating barriers. She could maintain this defensive strategy indefinitely because demons have unlimited stamina. The battle seemed hopeless for the demon slayers, but then something unexpected happened. Yushiro, a demon who fought on the side of humanity, managed to approach Nakime while she was distracted by controlling the castle. Using his own blood demon art, which allowed him to manipulate the senses of others, Yushiro altered Nakime's vision. He took control of what she could see, and in doing so, he gained control of the Infinity Castle itself. Yushiro did this as revenge. Muzan had killed Tamayo, the demon who had created Yushiro, and whom he loved deeply. Yushiro wanted to use Nakime's power against Muzan to turn his own fortress into a weapon that would help kill him. With Yushiro controlling what Nakime saw, he could manipulate the castle's positioning to benefit the demon slayers instead of Muzan. Muzan immediately realized what was happening and began using his own mental powers to try to take back control of Nakime. This started a fierce battle of wills between Muzan and Yushiro, two demons fighting mentally for dominance over Nakime's consciousness. The castle spiraled completely out of control as both sides wrestled for control, rooms shifting wildly, gravity changing randomly, the entire dimension becoming chaotic. Muzan tried to fight back while also defending himself from the Hashira who were attacking him physically. He attempted to regain control of Nakime while simultaneously battling Obanai and Gyu, but it was too difficult to do both at once. Whenever he focused on fighting the Hashira, Yushiro would gain ground in the mental battle. Whenever he focused on Nakime, the Hashira would land attacks on him. Finally, Muzan made a cold, calculated decision. He realized he could not take back Nakime and fight the demon slayers at the same time. He could not afford to have his own fortress being used against him, so he chose to eliminate the problem entirely. Muzan used his powers to kill Nakime. He crushed her head remotely, destroying his own Upper Moon 4, the last remaining member of the 12 Kizuki. Nakime died instantly, killed not by demon slayers but by her own master, sacrificed because she had become a liability rather than an asset. Because Nakime did not immediately disintegrate after death, Yushiro was able to use her body for one final act. He manipulated the Infinity Castle to rise up out of the ground, pushing it to the surface. This brought the entire battlefield above ground, which was crucial because it meant Muzan would be exposed to sunlight when dawn came. This final action from Nakime's corpse, controlled by Yushiro, helped the demon slayers in their fight against Muzan. Nakime's story is unique among the upper moons because her evil was not passionate or emotional. She did not kill out of rage like Gyutaro. She did not kill out of twisted love like Daki. She did not kill because she enjoyed suffering like Gyoko. She killed for purely practical reasons. Murder was a tool she used to achieve her artistic goals. It was no more meaningful to her than a carpenter using a hammer or a painter using a brush. This cold, emotionless approach to killing might actually be more disturbing than the passionate cruelty of other demons. Nakime never tried to justify her actions or create meaning from them. She did not have a tragic backstory that drove her to murder. She was not mentally ill in any obvious way. She was simply a person who discovered that killing people helped her career and decided that was acceptable. The lives of others meant nothing to her compared to her own success and recognition. Her marriage was unhappy, yes, and her husband was terrible, yes, but many people have bad marriages, and do not respond by becoming serial killers. Nakime made a choice to murder her husband. She could have left him, she could have sought help, she could have found other solutions, but she chose violence, and when that violence accidentally led to success, she chose to keep killing. What makes Nakime's story particularly chilling is how well her evil served her. Unlike many other demons whose human evil led to tragedy and suffering before they transformed, Nakime's murders actually made her successful and wealthy as a human. She achieved her dreams through murder. She became the recognized musician she always wanted to be by incorporating killing into her artistic process. Her evil was rewarded, reinforced, and validated by success. This meant that when Muzan offered to turn her into a demon, Nakime had absolutely no reason to refuse. She was already a serial killer. She was already comfortable with murder. She already had no moral qualms about taking lives for personal benefit. Becoming a demon just meant she could continue doing what she was already doing without fear of consequences. It was a natural progression rather than a corruption of her character. As a demon, Nakime was quiet, loyal, and efficient. She served Muzan faithfully for over 100 years. She controlled the Infinity Castle perfectly. She transported demons and humans as ordered. She located the Demon Slayer core. She was, by most measures, an ideal servant, and her reward for all that loyalty and service was death at her master's hands the moment she became inconvenient. Muzan killed Nakime without hesitation or remorse. He did not care about her century of service. He did not care about her loyalty. He did not care about her usefulness. The instant she became a problem, rather than an asset, he eliminated her. This was the reality of serving Muzan. Loyalty meant nothing. Service meant nothing. Demons were tools to be used and discarded when they were no longer useful. Nakime died the same way she lived, silent and emotionless. She did not scream or beg. She did not fight back or protest. She simply died, her head crushed by her master's power. The last member of the 12 Kizuki, eliminated not by demon slayers but by the very being she had served so faithfully. Her body was used one final time by Yushiro to help the demon slayers, turning her death into something that aided the cause she had fought against. In the end, Nakime's story is about someone who mistook success for virtue. She believed that because her murders led to recognition and wealth, they were justified. She thought that achieving her dreams legitimized any action she took to achieve them. She never questioned whether her goals were worth the lives she took. She never considered that maybe becoming a successful musician was not worth killing dozens of people. And when she became a demon, she brought that same cold calculation to her service. She did what was necessary to serve Muzan effectively. She fulfilled her role perfectly. She never questioned or hesitated. And she died because that perfect service was not enough. Because in Muzan's world, nothing was ever enough. Loyalty was worthless. Service was temporary. And everyone, even the most useful and obedient servants, could be discarded the moment circumstances changed. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Akeza, the man who forgot why he fought. Some demons became monsters because they were evil. Others became monsters because they were desperate. Akaza was the latter. As a human named Hakuji, he committed crimes not for pleasure or greed, but to save his dying father. When that failed, he found love and purpose with a new family. Then tragedy struck again, and in his grief and rage, he slaughtered 67 men with his bare hands. Muzan turned him into a demon, and for over 100 years, Akaza searched desperately for strength without remembering why he needed it. This is the story of Upper Moon 3, the demon who spent a century pursuing power to protect people who were already dead. Over 130 years ago in the slums of Edo, a boy was born who would become one of the most powerful demons in history. His name was Hakuji. His father was a kind man, but he was very sick. The illness made him weak and unable to work. They had no money for food or medicine. They lived in terrible poverty, struggling to survive each day. Hakuji loved his father deeply. He would have done anything to help him recover. But in the slums of Edo, there were no opportunities for a young boy to earn honest money. Nobody would hire him. Nobody would help them. They were alone, forgotten by society, left to die in poverty. So Hakuji made a choice. He became a thief. He started pickpocketing people in town. He stole money and valuables, anything he could sell to buy medicine for his father. He was only 11 years old, but he was clever and desperate enough to keep stealing, despite the risks. He knew it was wrong. He knew he was breaking the law. But watching his father suffer was worse than any punishment he might receive. Hakuji was caught. The magistrate, the local authority figure responsible for maintaining order, had him brought in for punishment. They beat him severely, hitting him over and over until his body was covered in bruises and cuts. The pain was tremendous, but Hakuji endured it. They also gave him tattoos on his forearms, marking him permanently as a criminal. These tattoos were punishment and warning, visible proof of his crimes that he could never remove. The magistrate threatened him. If he was caught stealing again, they would cut off his arms. They called him a demon child because despite the beating and the threats, Hakuji showed no fear. He simply said he would do whatever it took for his father's sake, even if they beat him for 100 years. But Hakuji paid no attention to the insults or the threats. He went right back to stealing as soon as he recovered from the beating. His father needed medicine, and nothing else mattered. He was caught a second time and beaten again. More tattoos were added to his arms. The threats became more severe. Still, Hakuji continued. The third time he was caught, the beating was worse than before. The magistrate made it clear that there would be no fourth chance. Next time, they would cut off his arms as promised. Hakuji was released and sent home, covered in fresh wounds, his arms decorated with 3 sets of criminal tattoos. When Hakuji returned home after this third beating, a villager stopped him with terrible news. His father had heard about his son's arrest. Learning that his boy was being punished and marked as a criminal because of him was too much for the sick man to bear. Hakuji's father had hanged himself. He left behind a letter. In it, he explained that he did not want medicine if it was earned through dishonest means. He wanted Hakuji to live a full, honest life. He did not want his son to become a criminal for his sake. He would rather die than watch his son destroy his future trying to save him. Hakuji was devastated. Everything he had done, all the stealing, all the beatings, all the pain and suffering, had been for nothing. His father was dead, and the medicine Hakuji had risked everything to obtain was worthless now. The one person he had been trying to protect was gone. With his criminal tattoos and no family left, Hakuji was banished from Edo. The authorities did not want a marked criminal living in their town. They forced him to leave. Hakuji had nowhere to go, no purpose, nothing left to live for. He wandered from place to place, filled with rage and grief, picking meaningless fights with anyone who crossed his path. In his anger, Hakuji nearly killed 7 men in one village, beating them savagely for no real reason. He was out of control, consumed by his loss and his hatred for a world that had let his father die. He was heading down a path that would end with him dead in a ditch somewhere, another forgotten victim of poverty and violence. That was when he met Keizo. Keizo was a martial arts master who owned a dojo where he taught the Soryu style, a fighting technique that used bare-fisted strikes targeting an opponent's neck and weapons. Keizo was strong enough to defeat Hakuji in a fight, stopping his rampage against the 7 men. But instead of simply beating him and sending him away, Keizo saw something in this angry, tattooed young man. He saw someone who was suffering, someone who needed guidance and purpose. Keizo made Hakuji an offer. He would take him in and teach him martial arts. In exchange, Hakuji would help care for Keizo's daughter, Koyuki, who was very sick and bedridden. Keizo was a single father who had to work and could not watch over his daughter constantly. He needed someone to stay with her, help her with daily tasks, and keep her company. Hakuji accepted. He had nowhere else to go, and the idea of having purpose again, of being able to help someone, was appealing. He moved into Keizo's dojo and began his new life. Koyuki was around Hakuji's age. She had been sick for a long time with an illness that left her too weak to walk or care for herself. She needed help eating, bathing, and moving around. Her mother had drowned herself years ago because she could not bear watching her daughter slowly die. Keizo had been caring for Koyuki alone ever since, struggling to balance his work with looking after her. Hakuji had experience caring for his sick father, so tending to Koyuki was not difficult for him. He helped her with everything she needed. He prepared her meals. He kept her room clean. He talked with her to keep her spirits up. In his free time, he trained with Keizo, learning the Soryu style and becoming more skilled in martial arts. As time passed, Hakuji and Koyuki grew close. They talked for hours each day. They shared their stories, their fears, their hopes. Hakuji told her about his father, about the poverty and the stealing and the guilt he carried. Koyuki told him about her illness, about watching her mother's despair, about feeling like a burden to her father. They understood each other's pain. They both knew what it was like to feel helpless and worthless. And slowly, as they spent more time together, they began to care for each other deeply. Friendship turned into love. Meanwhile, Hakuji's training progressed rapidly. He was naturally talented at martial arts, picking up techniques quickly and mastering forms that took others years to learn. Keizo was impressed by his dedication and skill. Hakuji trained as if his life depended on it, pushing himself constantly to become stronger. 3 years passed. Koyuki's health gradually improved under Hakuji's care. She regained the ability to walk on her own. She could help with chores around the dojo. She was not completely healed, but she was so much better than she had been when Hakuji first arrived. The dojo itself also prospered during this time, gaining more students and earning more respect in the community. One day, Keizo called Hakuji to speak with him privately. He asked Hakuji to become his successor, to inherit the dojo. and continue teaching the Soryu style after he was gone. And more importantly, he asked Hakuji to marry Koyuki. Hakuji was shocked and embarrassed. He was a criminal with tattoos on his arms. He was from the slums, with nothing to offer. But Keizo insisted. He had seen Hakuji's character over these 3 years. He trusted him. He wanted his daughter to be with someone who would love and protect her, and Hakuji had already proven he could do exactly that. Koyuki sat nearby, blushing and avoiding Hakuji's gaze. When he accepted her father's offer, she began to smile and tear up with joy. They were engaged. They would be married. For the first time since his father's death, Hakuji felt genuine happiness. He had found a new family, a new purpose, a reason to keep living. At a fireworks festival in town, Koyuki asked Hakuji if he remembered a conversation they had when she was still very sick. When she was bedridden, Hakuji had promised that one day, when she was healthy, they would go see the fireworks together. Koyuki had held on to that promise, using it as motivation to keep fighting her illness. She was grateful that someone had believed she had a future, that someone thought she could recover. Hakuji made a new promise to her that night. He vowed to protect her for the rest of his life, no matter what happened. He would never let anything harm her. He would always be there for her. His life, which had been worthless and empty after his father's death, now had meaning again. But there was a problem. There was another dojo nearby that competed with Keizo's school. The heir of that rival dojo had fallen in love with Koyuki. He wanted to marry her, but she had rejected him. When he learned that she was engaged to Hakuji, a man with criminal tattoos from the slums, he was furious and humiliated. This heir was arrogant and violent. He gathered his disciples from the rival dojo and came to fight Hakuji, intending to prove that Koyuki should be with him instead. But Hakuji defeated them easily. His years of training under Keizo, combined with his natural talent and experience from street fighting, made him far superior to these pampered students. The rival dojo's fighters were embarrassed and angry at their loss. Unable to defeat Hakuji in honest combat, they decided to use a different method. They would eliminate his new family through poison. One day, Hakuji went to visit his father's grave to tell him about his upcoming marriage. He wanted to share the news that he had finally found happiness again, that he was going to marry a wonderful woman and inherit a dojo. He wanted his father to know that despite everything that had happened, his life had turned around. While Hakuji was away at the grave, the members of the rival dojo snuck onto Keizo's property and poisoned the well. The well was where Keizo and Koyuki drew their drinking water. The poison was lethal and fast-acting. Keizo and Koyuki drank water from the poisoned well. They died shortly after, their bodies shutting down from the toxin in their systems. They were dead before Hakuji returned. When Hakuji came back from his father's grave, he immediately knew something was wrong. The atmosphere felt different. A student from the dojo found him and delivered the devastating news. The rival dojo had poisoned the well. Master Keizo and Koyuki had drunk from it. They were both dead. Hakuji ran to their bodies. He found Koyuki lying still, her eyes closed, her breathing stopped. The woman he loved, the person he had promised to protect for the rest of his life, was dead. The promise he had made to her, the vow that he would never let anything harm her, had been broken. He had failed again, just as he had failed his father. The despair and grief Hakuji felt in that moment was beyond description. Once again, someone he loved had died while he was away. Once again, his promises had amounted to nothing. Once again, his strength had not been enough to protect the people who mattered most. But this time, grief was joined by rage. This time, Hakuji knew exactly who was responsible. The rival dojo had murdered his family out of petty jealousy and wounded pride. They had taken everything from him again, and unlike when his father died, this time Hakuji could take revenge. Hakuji immediately went to the rival Kenjutsu dojo, the sword-fighting school that had poisoned his family. He went alone, unarmed, carrying nothing but his fists and his fury. The dojo had 67 members total, all trained swordsmen who practiced daily with real weapons. Hakuji killed them all. He used only his bare hands, the Soryu style that Keizo had taught him, and his overwhelming rage. He fought all 67 armed men and destroyed them. He did not just kill them, he mutilated them. He pulverized their bodies until they were mangled piles of flesh, barely recognizable as human. He attacked with such violence and ferocity that even trained swordsmen with weapons could not defend themselves against him. When Hakuji was finished, all 67 members of the rival dojo were dead. Their bodies were so badly damaged that it was difficult to tell who was who. Hakuji stood among the corpses, covered in blood, his hands broken and torn from the violence, his mind shattered by grief. This massacre caught the attention of Muzan Kibutsuji. Muzan had heard reports of what sounded like a demon attacking a dojo and killing everyone inside. He was curious because he had not sent any demons to that area. When he investigated and found Hakuji standing among the corpses, he was initially disappointed. It was a human, who had committed this act, not one of his demons. But Muzan was also impressed. A human, even a trained martial artist, killing 67 armed men with nothing but bare fists was extraordinary. This was someone with exceptional strength, skill, and willingness to commit extreme violence. Muzan saw potential. Hakuji barely noticed when Muzan appeared. He was so devastated and lost in his grief that he did not care what happened to him anymore. Muzan offered to turn him into a demon. He said Hakuji could become immortal, gain incredible power, and never have to fear being too weak to protect anyone ever again. Hakuji had nothing left. Everyone he loved was dead. His promises had all been broken. His strength had not been enough. When Muzan offered him power and immortality, Hakuji accepted. He did not care about the consequences. He did not think about what it meant to become a demon. He just wanted to stop feeling this pain. He wanted to become strong enough that he would never fail to protect anyone again. The transformation was agonizing, but Hakuji endured it. His body changed dramatically. His skin turned pale, with a greenish tint. The criminal tattoos on his arms transformed into blue markings that spread across his entire body in a pattern similar to the original tattoos. His hair turned bright pink, the same color as Koyuki's kimono. His eyes became yellow, with blue sclera. When the transformation was complete, Hakuji had a new name, Akaza, and he had lost his memories. Everything about his human life, his father, Keizo, Koyuki, all of it was gone from his conscious mind. He did not remember why he wanted to become strong. He only knew that he needed to pursue strength constantly, desperately, without ever stopping. But even though his conscious memories were gone, parts of his humanity remained buried deep inside him. Akaza refused to eat or kill women, even though doing so would make him significantly stronger. He did not understand why he felt this way. He just knew that killing women felt fundamentally wrong to him. This was because of Koyuki, because his subconscious mind still remembered her and refused to harm anyone who reminded him of her. Muzan gave Akaza special permission to maintain this restriction, though he teased Akaza about it and urged him to reconsider. Other upper moons, particularly Doma, complained that Akaza received special treatment, but Akaza never changed his mind. He simply could not bring himself to kill women, no matter how much it might benefit him. Akaza's blood demon art developed into a martial arts style called Destructive Death. It was heavily based on the Soryu style that Keizo had taught him, though Akaza did not consciously remember this. He could create powerful shockwaves with his punches and kicks. He developed a special technique called Compass Needle that appeared as a snowflake pattern on the ground, the shape influenced by Koyuki's name, which contained the character for snow, and the snowflake hairpins she wore. Many of his attack names were based on fireworks, referencing the promise he made to Koyuki to take her to see fireworks once she recovered. All these connections to his human life persisted even though Akaza himself had forgotten where they came from. Akaza became obsessed with fighting strong opponents and making them into demons. When he encountered powerful warriors, he would try to convince them to accept Muzan's blood and become demons so their skills would be preserved forever. He felt genuine pain watching strong people age and grow weaker over time. He wanted to save them from that decline, though he did not understand that this feeling came from his trauma of watching his father waste away from illness. Akaza hated weak people. He looked down on anyone he considered worthless. This hatred came from a corruption of his human memories. The rival dojo that poisoned his family had been too weak to defeat him in fair combat, so they resorted to cowardly poison. Akaza's subconscious mind associated weakness with dishonor and treachery, leading him to despise anyone who was not strong. For over 100 years, Akaza killed countless demon slayers and civilians. He became Upper Moon 3, the third strongest demon in existence. He killed numerous Hashira, the elite warriors of the Demon Slayer Corps. He served Muzan loyally, though he never felt true respect or awe for the Demon King. He simply saw Muzan as someone who gave orders, and saw himself as someone who must obey. Throughout all of this, Akaza never understood why he pursued strength so desperately. He did not remember that he was trying to become strong enough to protect people. He did not remember that his entire existence as a demon was built on broken promises and grief. He just knew that he had to keep fighting, keep getting stronger, never stop improving. His memories finally returned during his battle with Tanjiro Kamado and Giyu Tomioka in the Infinity Castle. After both of them awakened Demon Slayer marks and fought him with everything they had, Tanjiro managed to behead Akaza with his Nichiren sword. For most demons, decapitation means instant death, but Akaza refused to die. His willpower was so strong, his need to become stronger was so deep, that he overcame decapitation through sheer determination. His headless body continued fighting. He began regenerating his head, doing something that should have been impossible for any demon except Muzan himself. Then Tanjiro used a technique called Selfless State, which eliminated his fighting spirit completely. Akaza's compass needle, which detected fighting spirit to predict attacks and find weaknesses, suddenly became useless. He could not sense where Tanjiro was or what he was doing. For the first time in over a century, Akaza was vulnerable. In that moment of vulnerability, with his senses failing and his head regenerating, Akaza's memories began to return. He remembered his father hanging himself. He remembered Keizo taking him in. He remembered Koyuki smiling at him. He remembered the poison, the deaths, the massacre, the grief. He remembered everything. The spirit of Koyuki appeared before him in his mind, crying and begging him to stop fighting. Akaza did not recognize her at first. He tried to push past her, desperate to continue the battle. But as more memories flooded back, he began to understand. He remembered why he had wanted to become strong. He had wanted to protect his father. He had wanted to protect Keizo and Koyuki. He had spent over 100 years desperately pursuing strength to protect people who were already dead. Akaza realized the horrible truth. He had never lived an honest life like his father wanted. He had tainted Keizo's precious Soryu style by using it to murder innocent people. He had broken every promise he ever made. He had become exactly the kind of person his father had not wanted him to be. And worst of all, he had done it all while forgetting why he was doing it, making his crimes even more meaningless. He realized he hated himself. He hated himself for not being there when his father needed him. He hated himself for not being there when Keizo and Koyuki were poisoned. He hated himself for failing everyone he loved, and he realized that deep down, what he really wanted was not to become stronger. What he wanted was to die and reunite with the people he had failed to protect. Akaza stopped fighting. He stopped regenerating his head. Instead, he used his own powers to destroy himself. He chose to die, to accept his defeat, to finally let go of the strength he had been chasing for so long. As he faded away, he smiled at Tanjiro and thanked him for reminding him of his past. He acknowledged that he had lost fair and square. In the afterlife, Akaza's soul found itself in darkness, heading toward what he knew was hell. He saw the spirits of his father and Keizo waiting for him. They forgave him for his crimes and told him they understood. Then he saw Koyuki. She was still as beautiful as he remembered, waiting for him with tears in her eyes. Muzan's spirit tried to pull Akaza back, tried to force him to keep fighting, tried to manipulate him into remaining a demon. But Koyuki pulled Akaza away from Muzan's influence. She embraced him and told him it was okay, that he could rest now, that his suffering was over. Together, they walked into hell, reunited at last. Akaza's story is perhaps the most tragic of all the Upper Moons because his evil was born entirely from love and desperation. He stole for his father. He killed for his family. He became a demon because he had lost everything. Every terrible thing he did was rooted in his desire to protect the people he cared about. But in the end, all his strength was worthless. All his power meant nothing. The only thing that mattered was the love he had for his family, and that love finally brought him peace in death. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Doma, the demon who never felt anything. Some demons became evil because of tragedy. Others became evil because of suffering. Doma became evil because he was born without the ability to feel anything at all. From the moment he entered the world, he was completely empty inside. No love, no hate, no joy, no sadness, just nothing. His parents called him a blessed child who could speak to gods. In reality, he was a child who could not feel human emotions. When he became a demon, he simply gained the power to act on his emptiness. This is the story of Upper Moon 2, the demon who pretended to be human for so long that even he wondered if he might learn to feel something real. Over 130 years ago, a child was born who would become one of the most terrifying demons in existence, not because of his power or cruelty, but because of what he lacked. His name was Doma. He was born with extremely unusual physical features that made people believe he was special, perhaps even divine. Doma had platinum blonde hair that was so light it appeared almost silver or white. His eyes were even more remarkable. They were described as incredibly rare and beautiful, appearing to be made up of an array of rainbow pastel tones that faded into one another as they circled his irises. These multicolored eyes were unlike anything anyone had seen before. People who looked into them believed they were seeing something supernatural, something blessed by the gods. Doma's parents saw an opportunity in their unusual son. They founded a religious cult called the Eternal Paradise Faith. They placed young Doma at the center of this cult, claiming he was a divine being who could communicate directly with gods and Buddha. They told their followers that Doma could hear their prayers and relay messages from the heavens. People believed them because of Doma's extraordinary appearance, especially his rainbow eyes. From a very young age, Doma was forced to sit and listen to people's problems. Followers of the cult would come to him with their troubles, their fears, their hopes. They would tell him about their sick relatives, their financial problems, their relationship issues, their deepest worries. They believed this divine child could provide guidance and blessings from the gods. Doma would sit there and listen to them. He would smile and nod. He would say comforting words. He would give them advice. He would tell them what they wanted to hear. And the entire time, he felt absolutely nothing. From birth, Doma had been completely unable to experience human emotions. He did not feel love or affection for his parents. He did not feel joy when people praised him. He did not feel sadness when people cried to him about their suffering. He did not feel anger, fear, excitement, guilt, or any other emotion that normal humans experience. His mind was empty. His heart was a void. But Doma was intelligent, even as a young child. He understood that his lack of emotions was abnormal. He recognized that other people had feelings that he did not possess, so he learned to pretend. He studied how people acted when they were happy, sad, angry, or scared. He memorized the appropriate facial expressions and tone of voice for different situations. He became skilled at faking emotions so convincingly that almost nobody could tell he was empty inside. Doma sat in the cult's temple day after day, listening to people pour out their hearts to him. He found them ridiculous. In his mind, these people were pathetic and foolish. They came to him for advice about money, status, and love, ruining their lives out of desire for these things. Doma thought they were stupid for believing in gods, Buddha, heaven, and hell. He believed those things were just fairy tales that humans created because they could not accept the simple truth that when you die, you become nothing. Your heart stops, your brain stops, you rot, and return to the earth. That was all. But Doma also wondered what desire felt like. He had wealth, status, and near immortality once he became a demon, but he felt nothing about any of it. He was curious about what it would be like to actually want something, to care about something, to feel the emotions that drove other people to act the way they did. The most defining moment of Doma's childhood came when he was still very young. His father had been having affairs with multiple women from the cult. Doma's mother discovered this and became enraged. In her anger and despair, she murdered Doma's father by stabbing him repeatedly. Then, standing over her husband's corpse, she killed herself in the same manner. This happened while Doma was present. He watched his mother kill his father. He watched her take her own life immediately afterward. He stood there as his parents' blood pooled on the floor of their home. Most children who witnessed something this traumatic would be psychologically devastated for life. They would scream, cry, need therapy for years to come. Doma's only reaction was annoyance that the blood was making the room stuffy. He felt no grief for his dead parents. He felt no shock or horror at witnessing a double murder-suicide. He felt no fear or trauma. He simply complained about the smell of blood in the air and wanted the room to be cleaned. This moment perfectly demonstrated just how profoundly empty Doma was inside. With his parents dead, Doma inherited the Eternal Paradise faith cult. He continued leading it, pretending to be a divine figure who could guide people to enlightenment. He maintained the friendly, cheerful persona that his followers expected. He listened to their problems and gave them advice. He held ceremonies and rituals. He accepted their worship and their money, and he started killing them. Doma discovered that as the cult leader, he had the perfect system for finding victims. People came to him willingly. They trusted him completely. They believed he was a blessed being who would save them. This made them easy to manipulate and easy to kill. Doma would select certain followers, usually women, and he would kill and eat them. He justified this in his own nihilistic worldview by claiming he was saving them from suffering by letting them live inside his body forever. The cult had approximately 250 believers at any given time. Doma tried not to let the number grow too large because having too many followers would draw unwanted attention. He managed this carefully, recruiting new members at roughly the same rate he was killing and eating the existing ones. When Doma was 20 years old, he encountered Muzan Kibutsuji. The exact circumstances of their meeting are not entirely clear, but Muzan offered to turn Doma into a demon. Doma accepted. Perhaps he hoped that becoming a demon might allow him to finally feel something. Perhaps he simply wanted the power and immortality. Perhaps he did not care either way and just accepted because there was no reason not to. The transformation into a demon amplified Doma's already considerable emptiness. His physical appearance changed slightly. His skin became even paler. His body became more muscular. The rainbow pattern in his eyes became even more pronounced. But the most important change was that he now had supernatural powers, including a blood demon art that would make him extraordinarily dangerous. Doma's blood demon art granted him cryokinesis, the ability to generate and manipulate ice and freezing air. He could create ice from his flesh and blood, spawn it anywhere in his vicinity, and control it at will. The ice he created was extremely lethal because inhaling the freezing air would cause the cells in a person's lungs to die, making it impossible to breathe. His ice was also cold enough to freeze surroundings instantly, and make people's eyeballs nearly freeze solid. As a demon, Doma continued leading the Eternal Paradise faith cult. Now he had the perfect cover for his killings. He could murder and eat his followers, and nobody outside the cult would know they had disappeared. People joined the cult voluntarily, trusted him completely, and then vanished. It was the ideal hunting ground. Doma primarily ate women. He explained this by saying that women are more nutritious than men because of their ability to nurture babies. Their bodies contain more of whatever nutrients demons need to grow stronger. While other demons like Akaza refused to eat women for personal reasons, Doma had no such qualms. Women were simply better food in his calculation, so he ate them preferentially. Doma climbed through the ranks of demonkind quickly. His combination of intelligence, power, and his useful blood demon art made him valuable to Muzan. He eventually achieved the position of Upper Moon 6, the 6th strongest demon in existence. During his time as Upper Moon 6, Doma encountered 2 humans who would become important to demon history. In the Yoshiwara district, he found a young man named Gyutaro and his sister Ume living in terrible poverty and suffering. Gyutaro had killed several people to protect his sister, and both siblings were dying from their wounds. Doma offered them the chance to become demons. Gyutaro and Ume accepted. Doma gave them his blood, transforming them into demons. They became so powerful that they earned positions in the 12 Kizuki, becoming the Upper Moon 6 duo after Doma himself was promoted to a higher rank. Doma did not do this out of kindness or compassion. He simply saw potential in them and thought they might be useful. Over the years, Doma rose higher in the rankings. He eventually achieved the position of Upper Moon 2, the 2nd strongest demon in all of existence, surpassed only by Upper Moon 1, Kokushibo, and Muzan himself. This made him more powerful than Akaza, Upper Moon 3, despite Akaza having been a demon for longer. Akaza despised Doma. The 2 Upper Moons had a terrible relationship. Whenever they met, Akaza would attack Doma violently, once punching off his lower jaw and the upper portion of his head in annoyance. Doma would instantly regenerate from these attacks and claim that this was just their friendly greeting between best friends. In reality, Akaza found Doma's empty personality and casual attitude disgusting. Muzan also did not particularly like Doma, despite his loyalty and worship. Muzan believed that Doma would not demonstrate much growth as a demon because he lacked obsession or desire. Demons who desperately wanted something, who had strong emotions driving them, tended to grow more powerful. Doma felt nothing, wanted nothing, cared about nothing. Muzan rarely sent Doma on missions because of this, preferring to use demons like Akaza, who had more drive. Doma maintained his friendly, cheerful facade with everyone he met. He was outwardly pleasant and approachable. He spoke in a calm, carefree manner, even during serious situations. But underneath this act, he remained completely empty. He adopted sick beliefs and habits, such as genuinely believing he was saving people by eating them. His moral compass was non-existent because he had no emotions to create one. During the century he spent as a demon, Doma killed countless humans. 2 of his most significant victims were women who had connections to the Demon Slayer Corps. The first was Kanae Kocho, the Flower Hashira. Kanae was one of the 9 most powerful demon slayers of her generation, a kind woman who wanted to find a way for demons and humans to coexist peacefully. She encountered Doma during a mission. Despite her considerable skill and power, Kanae was no match for Upper Moon 2. Doma killed her, though the exact details of their battle are not described in the documents. Kanae's younger sister, Shinobu Kocho, would later become a Hashira herself and would dedicate her life to killing Doma specifically to avenge her sister, but that would come much later. The second significant victim was a young woman named Kotoha Hashibira. Kotoha had fled from an abusive husband and his mother, taking her infant son Inosuke with her. She was desperate and alone when she stumbled upon the Eternal Paradise faith cult. The cult members took her in, and she met Doma. For perhaps the only time in his existence, Doma developed something resembling fondness for another person. He found Kotoha's pure-hearted personality pleasant. He enjoyed her company in a way that was as close to friendship as someone like him could experience. He decided that he would not eat her. He planned to keep her alive and near him until she died of natural causes, which would have been decades away. But Kotoha was not stupid. As time passed, she began noticing things. She realized that followers of the cult would disappear. She observed Doma's behavior and started to suspect the truth. One day, she discovered the horrible reality. Doma was eating the cult members. He was luring people in with promises of salvation and then murdering and devouring them. Kotoha panicked. She grabbed her son Inosuke and tried to run away. Doma pursued her. Despite whatever small fondness he might have had for her, Doma could not allow her to escape and potentially expose his operation. He chased her to a cliff edge. In her desperation to save her baby, Kotoha threw infant Inosuke over the cliff. hoping he might somehow survive in the river below. Then Doma caught her. He killed and ate Kotoha. He did not show any remorse or hesitation. Whatever slight attachment he might have felt for her was not enough to override his nature. Miraculously, Inosuke did survive the fall and was later raised by wild boars, eventually becoming a demon slayer. But Kotoha was gone, another victim of Doma's endless killing. Doma's personality as a demon was disturbing not because he was overtly cruel or sadistic like other demons, but because of his complete detachment from his actions. He would kill people while smiling and acting friendly. He would mock their suffering not out of malicious intent, but because he genuinely could not understand why they cared so much. To him, emotions were foreign concepts that he observed in others but never experienced himself. He was prone to inappropriate and facetious behavior. During meetings with Muzan and other upper moons, Doma would speak in the same cheerful tone even when Muzan was raging and killing other demons. This annoyed everyone. Even Gyoko, another upper moon who had a friendly relationship with Doma due to their shared morbid tendencies, became uncomfortable when Doma tried to accompany him on a mission without Muzan's permission. When people expressed grief or anger at what he had done to them, Doma would treat their feelings with no respect whatsoever. He told Shinobu Kocho that he was disappointed he had not been able to eat her sister Kanae. He mocked Kotoha's life in front of her son Inosuke. He continuously taunted and provoked his opponents. However, his taunts were actually tactical. He deliberately tried to make people angry so they would attack him blindly and fall into range of his deadly blood demon art. Underneath his cheerful exterior, Doma was extremely intelligent. He had a keen analytical mind that allowed him to quickly assess situations and opponents. During battles, he could deduce his enemy's abilities just by observing them and immediately develop strategies to counter those abilities. He possessed incredible memory, remembering even insignificant details from over a century ago when he was still human. Doma was also clinically agnostic, being unable to experience proper emotions. He was aware that this made him abnormal, so he compensated with his charisma and learned to fake emotions well enough to deceive almost everyone. But he was insecure about his inability to feel. When someone pointed out that he felt nothing, he would drop his friendly facade and become genuinely angry, implying that being called empty bothered him even if he could not feel emotions the way normal people did. His nihilistic worldview shaped everything about him. He genuinely believed that heaven, hell, gods, and Buddha did not exist. He thought the afterlife was a fairy tale humans created because they could not accept that death meant becoming nothing. He believed humans were pathetic for needing these comforting lies to keep going. In his view, the idea of divine punishment or reward was ridiculous. Good people suffered and died, while wicked people prospered. There was no justice, no meaning, no purpose to anything. Doma's fighting style incorporated his cryokinesis with Tessenjutsu, the martial art of fighting with war fans. He carried a pair of sharp, gold-plated Japanese war fans that he wielded with exceptional skill. These fans were almost certainly made from his own flesh, as all demon weapons were. He could slash and cut with them as effectively as swords, while also using them to spread his ice abilities. His combat techniques were diverse and powerful. He could create ice lotuses and shards that would slice enemies apart. He could generate freezing clouds of air that would nearly freeze opponents' eyeballs. He could spawn icicles to impale targets. He could create ice vines to capture or slice opponents. He could summon large ice constructs in the shape of female figures that would blow freezing air. Most impressively, he could create miniature ice clones of himself that were fully capable of using all his techniques and fighting at nearly his full strength. His ultimate technique was called Rime Water Lily Bodhisattva. It created an enormous statue of a bodhisattva surrounded by ice lotuses. Doma would take refuge on a lotus on the statue's shoulder, while the construct generated huge gusts of deadly freezing air from its mouth and delivered powerful physical attacks with its massive arms. This technique required little concentration to maintain and was incredibly dangerous. One unspoken consequence of fighting Doma was that his freezing environment made it nearly impossible for demon slayers to awaken their demon slayer marks. These marks required surviving a body temperature of over 39 degrees Celsius, but Doma's ice made the environment so cold that maintaining such a high body temperature became impossible. This gave him a significant advantage against even the strongest demon slayers. Doma's final battle came in the Infinity Castle against 3 demon slayers, Shinobu Kocho, Kanao Tsuyuri, and Inosuke Hashibira. Shinobu was the insect Hashira who had dedicated her life to avenging her sister Kanae. Kanao was Shinobu's apprentice and adopted sister. Inosuke was Kotoha's son, though he did not know Doma had killed his mother until during their battle. Shinobu fought Doma first. Despite being a Hashira, she was quickly overpowered. Doma was simply too strong, too fast, and too skilled. He could easily keep up with her speed, dodge her attacks, and deliver devastating counters. Shinobu had one advantage. She had turned her entire body into poison. Her blood, her organs, everything about her was toxic to demons. Shinobu knew she could not defeat Doma in combat. Her plan was to let him kill and eat her. When Doma absorbed her body into himself, he would ingest the poison. Shinobu had calculated the exact dose needed, approximately 37 kilograms of wisteria poison, about 700 times the lethal amount needed to kill an average demon. Doma killed Shinobu and absorbed her body within seconds, using his ability to break down and assimilate human flesh through physical contact. He then proceeded to fight Kanao and Inosuke. Even fighting two opponents simultaneously, Doma dominated the battle. He could easily dodge their attacks, counter their techniques, and force them on the defensive. But slowly, the poison began to take effect. Doma's body started to break down. His regeneration slowed. His movements became less precise. The sheer quantity of poison Shinobu had ingested over months of preparation was finally overwhelming even his immense demonic constitution. Even as he was dying, Doma maintained his cheerful demeanor. He complimented his opponent's techniques. He mocked them casually. He created ice clones and constructs to fight them while his body decomposed. Only when the poison reached critical levels did he show genuine panic, summoning his water lily bodhisattva in desperation. Kanao and Inosuke finally managed to get close enough to decapitate Doma. Even then, he survived for a few moments longer, his severed head still talking and taunting them. He felt insulted that he was being killed by people he considered inferior, but the poison had done its work. His body crumbled into ash. In his final moments, as his consciousness faded, Doma experienced something he had never felt before. Looking at Shinobu's memory, seeing how she had sacrificed herself to create the poison that killed him, Doma felt his first genuine emotion. He proclaimed his love for Shinobu, finding her cute and admirable for her determination. As his soul descended toward what he believed was oblivion, Doma began to question his nihilistic beliefs. Maybe heaven and hell did exist after all. Maybe there was something after death. Maybe he had been wrong about everything. For someone who had spent his entire existence believing in nothing, this uncertainty in his final moments was perhaps the only time he ever felt doubt or fear. Doma's story is unique among the upper moons because his evil was not born from trauma, suffering, or corruption. He was born broken. He came into the world missing something fundamental that makes people human. He never had a chance to be good because he lacked the emotional capacity to understand what good even meant. His crimes were committed without malice, without passion, without any feeling at all. He was simply empty, pretending to be human, going through the motions of existence without ever truly experiencing life. In the end, only in death did Doma finally feel something real. Whether that emotion was enough to redeem him, or whether it simply highlighted how much of his existence had been wasted living without feelings, we will never know. But for a demon who never felt anything, experiencing love for just one moment before disappearing forever was perhaps the closest thing to salvation he could ever achieve. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Upper Moon 1, Kyokushibo, the brother who could never catch up. Some demons became monsters because they were victims. Others became monsters because they were evil. Kokushibo became a monster because he could not accept being second best. Born as Michikatsu Tsugikuni during the Sengoku era nearly 500 years ago, he was the older twin brother of Yoriichi Tsugikuni, the greatest demon slayer who ever lived. Michikatsu was talented, skilled, and powerful, but his younger brother was a genius, blessed with abilities that seemed to come from the gods themselves. For his entire human life, Michikatsu lived in Yoriichi's shadow. When he became a demon and took the name Kokushibo, he spent almost 5 centuries trying to surpass his brother, never succeeding, never letting go. This is the story of Upper Moon 1, the demon who threw away everything in pursuit of strength and discovered too late that he had become exactly what he never wanted to be. Nearly 500 years ago, during the Sengoku era, a time of constant warfare in Japan, twin boys were born to a samurai family. The older twin was named Michikatsu. The younger twin was named Yoriichi. Their father gave Michikatsu his name because he believed the boy would be strong and successful. From the moment they were born, these twins would be connected by blood but separated by fate. In samurai families of that era, the firstborn son inherited everything. The family estate, the family name, the family fortune, all of it went to the oldest child. Younger sons received nothing and were often sent away to become monks or to serve other families. This meant that Michikatsu, as the older twin, was destined to inherit their father's position and wealth. Yoriichi, born just moments later, was destined to be sent away when he came of age. Their father began training Michikatsu in swordsmanship from a very young age. Michikatsu practiced constantly, learning the techniques of a samurai warrior. He was naturally talented and picked up sword fighting quickly. He was proud of his skills and worked hard to become stronger. He wanted to make his father proud and prove himself worthy of inheriting the family legacy. Yoriichi, on the other hand, was different from birth. He did not speak for his first 7 years of life. He clung to their mother constantly, seeming weak and dependent. Their father showed no interest in training him since he was the younger son who would be sent away anyway. Michikatsu felt pity for his little brother, seeing him as meek and helpless. He gave Yoriichi a flute as a gift, telling him to use it to call for help if he ever needed his older brother. But appearances were deceiving. One day, when they were children, Michikatsu witnessed something that shattered his understanding of his brother. A trained swordsman attacked their father, and Yoriichi, who had never received any training in his life, instantly defeated the attacker with 4 perfect sword strikes. Yoriichi had been born with an ability called the transparent world, which allowed him to see the muscles, blood flow, and movements of others with perfect clarity. He also possessed a demon slayer mark from birth, giving him superhuman physical abilities. Michikatsu was shocked and devastated. He had trained for years to develop his sword skills. Yoriichi had never trained a single day and was already far superior. From that moment, Michikatsu's feelings toward his brother began to change. The pity turned to jealousy. The affection turned to resentment. He realized that no matter how hard he worked, his younger brother would always be better. Their mother died when they were young. After her death, Yoriichi left the family home to become a monk, as tradition demanded for younger sons. Michikatsu stayed and continued his training, eventually getting married and having 2 children. He became a skilled samurai, respected for his abilities, but he could never forget that his younger brother, with no training, had been better than him. During this era, demons were a serious threat to humanity. Demons were creatures that ate humans and could only be killed by sunlight or by special swords. A secret organization called the Demon Slayer Corps fought these demons using special sword techniques called breathing styles. Michikatsu joined the Demon Slayer Corps, hoping to prove himself and perhaps find a purpose beyond living in his brother's shadow. And then he discovered that Yoriichi had also become a demon slayer. Not only that, but Yoriichi had become the strongest demon slayer in history. Yoriichi had created sun breathing, the most powerful breathing style that ever existed. He was so strong that he could fight multiple demons at once and win without being injured. The Hashira, the 9 strongest demon slayers, could not even come close to his level. Yoriichi tried to teach sun breathing to other demon slayers, but nobody could learn it properly. Their bodies could not handle the techniques. So Yoriichi adapted his teachings, creating different breathing styles based on what each person could do. Michikatsu learned from his brother and developed his own style, called moon breathing, based on sun breathing, but adapted to his own abilities. Michikatsu awakened a demon slayer mark during his training. This mark dramatically increased his physical abilities, making him much stronger and faster. He became one of the most powerful demon slayers of his generation. But there was a terrible secret about the demon slayer mark. Everyone who awakened it died before reaching the age of 25. It was a curse, a price paid for the extra power. As Michikatsu approached 25 years old, he became terrified. He did not want to die. He had worked so hard to become strong, and now he was going to die young, having never surpassed his brother. He became obsessed with finding a way to extend his life and continue growing stronger. His wife and children were no longer important to him. His duty as a samurai meant nothing. All that mattered was becoming stronger and avoiding death. Then, Michikatsu encountered Muzan Kibutsuji, the Demon King. Muzan offered him a choice: die at 25, like all the other marked demon slayers, or become a demon and live forever with the chance to continue perfecting his techniques. Michikatsu accepted without hesitation. He abandoned his humanity, his family, his duty, and his brother. He became a demon and took a new name, Kokushibo. The transformation gave Kokushibo incredible power. He gained 6 eyes arranged in 3 sets on his face, with yellow irises and red sclera. His appearance became intimidating and otherworldly. His physical abilities increased dramatically beyond even what the Demon Slayer mark had given him. He developed a blood demon art that allowed him to create sharp crescent moon-shaped blades from his sword attacks, making his moon-breathing techniques far more deadly. Kokushibo created a special sword from his own flesh and blood. Unlike normal demon slayers who carried Nichirin swords made from special ore, Kokushibo's sword was part of his body. It was covered in eyes and veins, appearing grotesque and alive. He named it Kyokoku Kamusari. This sword could regenerate if damaged and could change its shape during battle. Kokushibo quickly rose through the demon ranks. His combination of centuries of sword training, mastery of moon breathing, superhuman demon abilities, and his blood demon art made him extraordinarily powerful. He achieved the position of Upper Moon 1, the strongest demon in existence aside from Muzan himself. He held this position for nearly 500 years, longer than any other demon. During his centuries as a demon, Kokushibo killed countless demon slayers. He slaughtered Hashira, the elite warriors of the core. He fought and defeated anyone who challenged him. Other demons who wanted his position would challenge him to blood combat, and Kokushibo would absorb their bodies after defeating them. The only exception was Akaza, Upper Moon 3, who Kokushibo allowed to live because he enjoyed the challenge of fighting him. Kokushibo followed rules strictly and showed great respect to the hierarchy of demons. He was loyal to Muzan, carrying out his orders without question. He rarely spoke, and when he did, his words carried weight and authority. He maintained an aura of tranquility and mystery that made other demons uncomfortable around him. Even Muzan considered him a valuable business partner rather than just a servant. But underneath his calm exterior, Kokushibo was still consumed by jealousy and resentment toward his brother. Even after becoming a demon, even after nearly 500 years, he could not let go of his feelings toward Yoriichi. He kept the flute that Yoriichi had treasured, the one Michikatsu had made for him as children. He carried it with him for centuries, unable to throw it away. Decades after Kokushibo became a demon, he encountered Yoriichi again. By this time, Yoriichi was an old man, over 80 years old. The curse of the demon slayer, Mark should have killed him before age 25, but somehow, Yoriichi had been immune to the curse. He had lived a full life while Kokushibo had abandoned his humanity and become a monster. They fought. Despite being elderly, nearly blind, and weakened by age, Yoriichi almost killed Kokushibo. The old man moved with such speed and precision that Kokushibo, with all his demon powers, could barely react. Yoriichi's sword came within a breath of cutting off Kokushibo's head. Only Yoriichi's age saved Kokushibo. The old man's heart gave out in the middle of the attack, and he died standing up, sword raised for the final blow. Kokushibo was devastated. Even at 80 years old, even dying of old age, Yoriichi had nearly defeated him. All of Kokushibo's power, all his centuries of training, all his demonic abilities, none of it had been enough. He stared at his brother's body and realized that the gap between them had never closed. He would never surpass Yoriichi. His brother had been better than him in life, and even in death, Yoriichi had proven superior. Kokushibo cut Yoriichi's body into pieces out of rage and grief, but he could not bring himself to eat his brother. He left the body there and walked away. He continued his existence as Upper Moon 1, killing demon slayers, serving Muzan, growing stronger, but he never forgot. The memory of that final battle haunted him for the next 400 years. Kokushibo valued the concept of legacy deeply. He had abandoned his wife and children when he became a demon, but his bloodline continued. His descendants survived through the centuries. Eventually, his lineage produced Muichiro Tokito and Yuichiro Tokito, twin brothers who lived nearly 500 years after Kokushibo's transformation. Muichiro became a demon slayer and achieved the rank of Hashira at age 14, making him one of the most talented swordsmen in history. When Kokushibo encountered Muichiro in the Infinity Castle, he immediately recognized him as his descendant using his transparent world ability. He was pleased that his bloodline had produced such talent. He praised Muichiro's skills and offered to turn him into a demon so his abilities would not be wasted. Muichiro refused and fought Kokushibo with everything he had. The battle was completely one-sided. Kokushibo was so much stronger and faster that Muichiro could not even scratch him. With casual ease, Kokushibo sliced off Muichiro's hand before the young Hashira could react. He praised Muichiro's resolve but made it clear that a human could not defeat him. Another demon slayer named Genya Shinazugawa tried to help Muichiro. Genya had a unique ability where he could gain demon powers temporarily by eating demon flesh. He had eaten pieces of other demons before and gained their abilities. When he tried to fight Kokushibo, the Upper Moon 1 was disgusted. He called Genya an imitation demon and said he could not let such an abomination live. Kokushibo sliced Genya into pieces so quickly that his sword barely seemed to move. Then Sanemi Shinazugawa, the Wind Hashira, and Genya's older brother, arrived to fight Kokushibo. Sanemi was one of the strongest demon slayers alive, experienced and skilled, but even he struggled against Kokushibo's overwhelming power. The Upper Moon 1 could match Sanemi's speed and strength, countering his techniques and delivering devastating attacks. Sanemi was forced to fight desperately just to survive, unable to land any significant hits. Finally, Gyomei Himejima arrived. Gyomei was the Stone Hashira, the strongest demon slayer of the current generation. He was blind, but possessed incredible physical strength and unique weapons, a spiked flail and axe connected by a chain. When Kokushibo saw Gyomei's perfect physical form, he smiled for the first time in the battle. He was genuinely delighted to face such a powerful opponent, commenting that it had been perhaps 300 years since he had seen such a magnificent warrior. Even against Gyomei, Kokushibo held his own. He forced Gyomei to awaken his Demon Slayer mark just to match his speed. When Sanemi also awakened his mark, the two Hashira fought together against Kokushibo, but the upper moon, one could still hold them both off simultaneously. His techniques were refined over centuries, his reflexes were superhuman, and his blood demon art made his attacks unpredictable and difficult to defend against. Kokushibo told Gyomei about the curse of the Demon Slayer mark. He explained that everyone who awakened the mark died before age 25. Since Gyomei was past 25 and had just awakened his mark, he would die that very night. Kokushibo tried to convince Gyomei to become a demon to avoid this fate and continue perfecting his techniques. But Gyomei refused, calling Kokushibo's mentality pathetic. This rejection angered Kokushibo. He became more aggressive, attacking with greater intensity. But the combined efforts of Muichiro, Genya, Sanemi, and Gyomei slowly began to turn the tide. Muichiro, despite his injuries, used his remaining strength to pin Kokushibo in place with his sword. Genya, who had eaten some of Kokushibo's flesh during the battle, developed a blood demon art that created trees to restrain the upper moon one's movements. With Kokushibo immobilized, Sanemi and Gyomei launched a coordinated attack on his neck. Their swords turned bright red from the force of their attacks clashing together, which made them even more effective against demons. Together, they managed to cut through Kokushibo's incredibly durable neck and decapitate him. For most demons, decapitation means instant death, but Kokushibo refused to die. His will to survive and become stronger was so intense that he forced his body to evolve. He began regenerating his head, something thought impossible for any demon, except Muzan. His headless body continued fighting, attacking Gyomei, and demonstrating that even without a head, Kokushibo was still dangerous. As his head began to regrow, Kokushibo transformed into something even more monstrous. His body sprouted extra appendages, horns, fangs, and blade-like protrusions all over. He became a grotesque creature, far removed from the dignified warrior he had once been. He declared that nothing could kill him now, except the sun itself. But then Kokushibo looked down and saw his reflection in a sword. He saw what he had become, a monster covered in eyes and blades, grotesque and twisted, nothing like the samurai he had once been. Nothing like his brother, who had remained strong and noble until his death. Kokushibo realized that in his desperate pursuit of strength, he had become the very thing he had never wanted to be. Memories flooded back. He remembered his wife and children, whom he had abandoned. He remembered his duty as a samurai that he had thrown away. He remembered his brother teaching him sword techniques with patience and kindness. He remembered the last battle with Yoriichi, his elderly brother nearly killing him despite being on death's door. He remembered finding the flute he had made for Yoriichi still in his brother's possession after all those years, treasured and kept safe. Kokushibo had spent nearly 500 years pursuing strength. He had become Upper Moon One. He had killed countless people. He had refined his techniques to their absolute peak. And for what? He had never surpassed Yoriichi. He had accomplished nothing meaningful. He had no legacy worth leaving behind. He had become a monster that his brother would have been ashamed of. With tears streaming from his 6 eyes, Kokushibo stopped regenerating his head. He stopped fighting. He chose to die. His body began to crumble into ash. In his final moments, he looked at the flute he had carried for centuries and watched it shatter. He thought about his brother and asked Yoriichi's spirit why he had even been born. He expressed his frustration that he could never become as strong and honored as his younger twin. In the very end, Kokushibo admitted the truth to himself. I just wanted to be you. All the jealousy, all the resentment, all the centuries of pursuing strength. It had all been because Michikatsu wanted to be like his brother. He wanted to be the strongest. He wanted to be recognized. He wanted people to look at him the way they looked at Yoriichi. But he never could achieve it, and in trying, he lost everything that made him human. Kokushibo's death was tragic because it was self-inflicted in every way. He was not forced to become a demon. He chose it. He was not forced to abandon his family. He chose it. He was not forced to kill thousands of people. He chose it. Every step of his path toward becoming a monster was a choice he made because he could not accept being second best. The battle against Kokushibo cost the lives of both Muichiro and Genya. Even in death, Upper Moon One claimed victims. It took 3 Hashira with Demon Slayer marks, access to the transparent world, bright red blades, and a Demon Slayer with blood demon art abilities working together to defeat him. His power was so overwhelming that even with all these advantages, victory was barely achieved. Kokushibo's story shows the danger of comparing yourself to others. Michikatsu was talented, skilled, and powerful in his own right. He was a capable samurai and demon slayer. If he had accepted his own strengths and limitations, If he had focused on being the best version of himself rather than trying to surpass his brother, he might have lived a happy life. He could have raised his children, served his family with honor, died with dignity at age 25 among his comrades. Instead, he threw it all away. He became a demon who lived for centuries but accomplished nothing meaningful. He became stronger than almost anyone, but it brought him no satisfaction because he never surpassed the one person he wanted to beat. He kept the flute his brother treasured for 400 years, unable to let go of the connection, unable to move forward, trapped by jealousy and regret. In his final moments, Kokushibo understood that he had wasted his existence. Nearly 500 years of life, and what did he have to show for it? Dead demon slayers, whose names he did not remember, a position as upper moon, one that ultimately meant nothing, techniques refined to perfection but used only for murder. A brother who had loved him despite his jealousy, now dead for 400 years, whose memory still haunted him. The saddest part of Kokushibo's story is that Yoriichi never stopped caring about him. When Yoriichi fought Kokushibo that final time, he shed tears. He called out to his brother with affection. The flute that Michikatsu made as a child, Yoriichi carried it with him until his death, treasuring it as a reminder of his older brother. Yoriichi never hated Michikatsu. He never looked down on him. He loved his brother and was saddened by what he had become. If Michikatsu had known this, if he had understood that his brother's success was not meant to diminish him, maybe things would have been different. But jealousy blinded him, pride consumed him, fear of death drove him to make terrible choices, and in the end, he died alone, having pushed away everyone who ever cared about him, finally acknowledging that all he ever wanted was to be like the brother he had resented for so long. Kokushibo was the strongest demon after Muzan, but strength could not fill the emptiness inside him. He was Upper Moon 1 for 5 centuries, but the title meant nothing when he realized he had become a monster. He accomplished his goal of living past 25 and continuing to refine his techniques, but without purpose or meaning. That extended life was hollow. His death was a release, an end to centuries of futile pursuit. As his body crumbled to dust, Kokushibo was finally freed from the jealousy that had defined his existence. The brother he had envied and resented was waiting for him somewhere beyond death, along with the family he had abandoned and the humanity he had thrown away. Whether he found peace or damnation, at least his suffering was over. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.